Go back to auto. Oh, wait. Maximum tiles. Go back.
Yeah.
We'll go back to tiled. Sweet, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
always happens. I know. I was so prepared too, and I'm actually shocked this mic didn't work too. So I was just thinking, like, wow.
It always goes on.
Yeah, you always got to be ready, I guess. You should use my phone for chat.
Sure.
Eight seconds. Oh, nice.
All right, guys, let us know if everything's working out. I think I have finally got all our bugs worked out. I didn't work out anything. I don't know what happened. But I think I do have us on here. I do need to change the size of our window. I just have you guys in the middle, so give me a second on that. But it looks like they are hearing us, which is great. While I'm resizing these windows, let me do a little introduction. So I'm here with the duo known as Bike Breath. Emma and Brendan, who are cyclists, YouTubers, content creators from Ottawa, Canada. And so the reason I found your channel, my buddy who's, I don't call him this in real life, he's Large Marge in the chat, but he was like, hey, I found this YouTube channel I like. They seem to ride a lot of the same stuff as us. I can't remember the context of it. We might have even been talking about probably riding. I think I might have brought him up because the chat is
Nice.
actually who just turned me on to him this summer, so I was late to that game
Right.
as well. And then he was like, well, have you seen this one? It kind of reminds me of that. So I've been going back and watching a lot of your content and really digging it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Does he rides a Gorilla Monsoon, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, he has the green one, and I was trying to. One of the things I wanted to do was look up the year because I found it really interesting because your arcs are fairly similar with the builds.
Yeah, well, actually, when I bought mine, it was the very end of the first Sunset colorway, and that one was just coming out. So I had the option between the two, but I couldn't help but go with like the most obnoxious one. But every time I see that one, it's kind of it's the colorway that got away in a way. I see it, and I'm like, man, that could have been really sick.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really plan to hold on to this bike for so long, and it's been forever now.
But then you got the super professional in the Nightjade.
Yeah, which is similar.
Like, it's not exactly, but
Redemption.
it's very similar. So there
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah, I did that Ben's Monsoon, Large Marge's Monsoon. Okay, we're still resizing while I'm trying to talk, but yeah.
I also want to know the backstory to the name Large Marge. I've been very curious for a long time. Yeah.
I mean, it's a Pee Wee Herman reference, or not Pee Wee Herman. Yeah, Pee Wee Herman. Yeah, Large Marge is a
Okay.
character in Pee Wee Herman. So
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know why.
That I didn't know.
I don't know his backstory for choosing it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't have Pee Wee Herman in Canada, so that reference eluded us, I guess.
Yeah.
They cut him off there. They didn't let him.
I'm sure we do, but we just
Yeah.
we don't know it.
I think you don't have Pee Wee Herman because you're just 10 years younger.
You know what it looks like.
Yeah,
Well, you've
that's
seen
that guy. Right?
Blow, right? He's the weed
Oh,
dealer in
yeah.
Blow. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Mhm.
What is
There we
his
go,
real
that one
name? Do you
landed.
know his real name?
Who are we talking about?
Pee Wee Herman. Yeah, he became like after the whole thing where he got busted in a porn theater and stuff and was like canceled
Yeah.
before they used that word. He like came back and like acted in a lot of popular movies. This is not where this channel
Right.
should be going. By the way.
It's Paul Rubens.
Paul Rubin. Yeah. Anyways.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, large.
But
it's-
Probably Riding is a good reference too. We actually started watching, I think his name's Marcus. We watched his channel quite a bit this summer too and have been staying tuned. And now we really have the bug to go to Seoul. It's got us wanting to go have some dumplings or cold noodles and some good coffees in Korea.
Yeah. Are cold noodles actually cold? I've never had them. Is that what their name comes from?
I think so.
Yeah.
Even it's super cold here in Canada, and we still keep our noodles hot.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, this is an interesting idea. Like, I know people who do like overnight oats, and I've never done it because I like my oats hot. So I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know. I'm not a cold food fan.
Yeah. So yeah, it'd be interesting. Yeah, one of my good friends growing up. I know you mentioned you used to skateboard a lot, and I really liked what you wrote about like bringing the kind of community that's from skateboarding to bikes. I always felt like that. But one of my friends was from outside of Seoul, and he actually moved here when he was like 2. But I remember when he actually got his American citizenship, his parents like really wanted him to go into business, and they had him put Bob on his like American citizenship name, and we had called him Jung our whole lives. And I'm like, Bob, you just picked the most generic American name possible.
Yeah.
So.
Oh man, that's good.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also old enough that I watched the Seoul Olympics. I think that must have been '88. So that's when I first like was in tune with like Korea and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah, I think his channel probably riding. It's so cool how like I don't know, he does like better than someone just visiting Seoul or anywhere in the world, like doing a travel vlog and telling you about something that they're kind of also just discovering, like how he's so embedded in the culture, but also from like, you know, a British man's lens. Like I find it's just so fascinating. Like it's really the local experience and something I didn't expect to fall in love with on YouTube, but I can't stop watching that
That's
guy's
the coolest
channel.
part of YouTube is kind of getting like these random little corners of people's experience, and I feel like the like alt cycling community it's small but mighty and does a really good job of that because you're not shredding trails or seeing like necessarily high speed riding or talking about power meters or dialing things in. So it tends to be so much more lifestyle oriented. And it was nicely timed to see some of that content and find your channel as we were starting to do our thing. Cause we sort of had that moment in the beginning of just being like, I think we were really starting to get into it around the time of the pink bike fiasco where they talked about people bumbling down trails. And we were like, oh, that's exactly what we're doing. But obviously, you know, people want to see more vlog and lifestyle stuff that's relatable too.
Yeah, I think is that kind of the thing, is the kind of doing the same thing but in different locations? Because I look at Probably Riding and like we're saying, there's nothing overly exceptional about except who he is and what he's doing, where he's doing it. And so I think that's kind of like the different location thing is like kind of a big deal, like doing it in different ways. I don't know, because that's like one of the things, like I wrote some notes and I'm interested in like the winners there and what is are your leaves already, like are you a month ahead, half a month ahead, that kind of stuff, what you're seeing like and all that. And I think that's kind of the big, I don't know, the YouTube like getting popular is the more chill version of stuff because people just want to see what other people who are like, I always say the word normies, like normies who ride bikes. It's like, what are they doing in their place? I don't know.
Yeah, leisure athletes. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I think someone once said it was actually like a tip for content creation. They said make content around your life and don't make your life around your content. And like that really resonated to me as like we were trying to figure this out. But to your point, I think that's kind of what makes these channels so good is that like I don't know, you're being the most authentic version of yourself and you are really just showing it from your lens. Like for example, our Montreal video that we just put out, we've been visiting. It's only an hour and a half away from us by car. So we've been there all the time. They always get the better concerts, so we're always in Montreal. But we kind of we just kind of filmed the stuff that we love about Montreal. And like I can make 10 more videos because it's such a great city full of stuff. But we've been getting, very thankfully, a lovely response to that video. And I thought like, wow, I didn't expect that. Not that I have like a lens like, oh, this is not going to do well, but I think people really enjoyed that. Like we didn't show all the big touristy spots. We were just like, this is like our favorite poutine spot. This is our favorite bike shop. This is even our favorite street to ride down. So I think, I guess it's just when people become so authentic. I mean, I get this from your channel too all the time. We're always learning little things about Ohio. And I thought like, again, it's not like when I'm on YouTube and maybe searching something, it's not what I expect to find. And I like that. I like that I'm just hit with all this new information from someone who's just authentically, this is their daily life. It's just, it's the speed I like. I don't want always the intense like view at every kind of thing someone wants to show me. It's give me the chill view, but also really authentic. So I think that's kind of the common thread. Maybe I mean, I'm not gonna I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but maybe between our channel, probably riding, your channel, authenticity.
Yeah, because it was really interesting with probably riding, because I don't know if you guys watched, I think it was a couple months ago, there was a kind of, or not, maybe a month ago, there was a big break, but then he put videos from back home in England, and he was talking about growing up there and how boring it was. I have been an Anglophile for, like I grew up in a British punk rock and like everything England. And so like he's riding the canal trails, and we have canal trails here. And so what he was saying, the place he wanted to escape, I found so fascinating. And it's just a, grass is always greener thing too. Like,
totally. Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. Also, side note, her dad's from Ohio.
Yeah,
and,
he was so excited. He was born and raised in Cleveland. I think he left when they were like 14. Yeah, my uncle may or may not have been coming up on 18 around the time of the Vietnam War. So we ended up in Canada.
No way.
Yeah, I was just letting him know that we were going to be doing this, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Akron," and he was all excited because that's his old stomping ground.
Yeah.
Oh, my dad's more from the Cleveland area. He actually got out of Vietnam because when they went for the physical, they found something in his ear which he never knew he had, and they're like, "You wouldn't be able to hear machine gun fire," and it's
wow,
might have saved his life. But yeah,
wow,
but yeah, that's where we're from. He got transferred down here when I was probably 3 or 4, but it's Akron from Cleveland. And when you said the cool concert, my buddy Dave snickered in the background because we're in Akron and Cleveland gets everything cool and they bypass Akron.
Yeah.
But Ottawa's
we're kind of right in between. Yeah, we're right in between Toronto and Montreal, who are so much bigger. So Ottawa's big enough population-wise, but it's not exciting enough that they're going to make an extra stop before going to Montreal.
To be honest, like Canada is, it's the same width. It's not the same size as America, but it's the same width at least. And when bands say they're doing an American and Canadian tour, it's America, and then Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, and then that's it.
Which is crazy. Well, we get that too. They skip the middle of the country. It's like American, it's like New York, Chicago. But Chicago to California is gigantic. I mean, it's like Ottawa to Vancouver. That is not that's thousands of miles,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I was just looking at the chat too, and someone mentioned, probably riding's videos are really normal life and it's relatable as opposed to like a multi-day bike packing trip. And like I'm headed on a trip this weekend and been doing all my research on YouTube, and I do think that that's such a great point because I'm going to be in London in part of my trip, and so I was watching Marcus's video and taking notes, and a lot of the other cycling content that came up was like, ride like Paris to London, and that's definitely not my fitness level or necessarily my vibe. So having something more relatable can just be kind of practical too, for that reason.
Totally.
Yeah, I do think, because there's been people who hit me up, they're like, man, this makes me want to move to Akron. I'm like, well, you might want to slow your roll a little bit. I mean, like we have fun here, and I do try to show the best side. And I said, I love the industrial gravel thing, our abandoned, I mean, we're the Rust Belt. I mean, this is what this is. And so we make the most of it. And that's what we explore. We don't have that. We don't have the unbound gravel here in Ohio. I mean, there's
Right.
Southern Ohio and Central Ohio do have some cool hilly long gravel races, but we go down the abandoned tracks and through the abandoned factories, and I feel like I was curious about this too. I know when you guys do some of the dog walking paths, you've called them. Are those like gray area paths? Are like there's just not any no bike sign type thing? Because that's a lot of what we do.
That one video where I think I even titled it like dog walking trails. That's my dad's backyard.
Oh, okay.
And like he literally my dad actually, it's kind of fun. Him and his partner are golden retriever breeders. And like she has been at it for like years and years, and like very ethical breeders. She has like a very long wait list because she doesn't, obviously she's not a puppy mill, but besides the point, they have a pretty large property and they'll walk like 12 golden retrievers at one time, and it's the funniest looking thing. But because of that, they've like carved these trails, and my dad lives 8 hours away from us, north, like pretty far north in the province of Ontario, and so I was just up there visiting, and I was like, I don't think a bike has ever been ridden on here, and I thought I would just make a little cinematic edit.
So notably, those trails are in our hometown of Timmins, Ontario, which is
Yeah.
very far. Any kind of unlabeled trails like that here, people are they're pretty uptight about things.
Yeah.
Like there's little sections of questionable areas, and I think it's a pretty big cycling scene here, like much more road riding than anything else. Like there's Tour de France riders from here, and it's a big thing. So people are, who are not of the cycling community and who might be property owners that a trail might like veer into their property, I think are pretty on the lookout for it. So there's a bit of that, but it's touch and go.
Well, we have a lot of mixed use trails too. And like also when we say here, like Ottawa, it's the capital of Canada. We always call it like the capital region, but it borders on Quebec. Basically, right at downtown Parliament, there's a river, and then it's Quebec. And Quebec is like, it's just so funny. They clearly got the best land. There's like immediately all this beautiful elevation. The trails are gorgeous, like all the foliage in the fall and everything. I mean, we get it in Ottawa too, but so when we say here, it's like a lot of Quebec where we ride, even though like, we could leave from our home in Ottawa on bike and be in Quebec in 5 minutes. But there's a lot of mixed use trails that, are hiking and cycling, but it's slowly getting a lot better. Like we're seeing a lot of trails that are now like cycling only or hiking only. And we're pretty lucky. We're lucky to have a lot of really nice trails, like within 5 minutes of downtown. And it's weird. It kind of feels like you drop off a cliff. Like you're in a big city, but then you're in really quiet nature very fast. So that's kind of cool.
I pulled up the map for anyone who doesn't know, because I didn't realize before your video how close Ottawa was to Montreal. And it's so funny because I'm like such a history nerd, such a geography nerd, and then just like across the Great Lakes is like the area I know like the least. And it's like I just haven't paid attention. It's I've been to Toronto.
I feel the same way.
But yeah. And I don't know what it is about that. I guess we're all looking for maybe more exotic things sometimes, but yeah. And I have
I feel like
bike map up too, so people could see where the bike routes are. But anyways, go on.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I feel the exact same way. Like I lived in Toronto for a while, and like looking out on Lake Ontario, it felt like, well, that's just another ocean. There's nothing over there. When really, like that's where Rochester and all that stuff is, and obviously America is over there. But
Yeah, I think Canada's funny that way, where we find ourselves, like if I'm traveling or something, or we used to work with tons of Americans, we will always explain what Ottawa is because we just assume it's, and people used to laugh at us and be like, well, I know what Ottawa is sometimes. However, like Canada is so self-effacing and so kind of like, oh shucks, that I think we just assume that nobody really knows us. We also don't have like that much cultural representation. Like a lot of our media and stuff is American and very Americanized if it's ours. So I feel like there isn't great awareness really anywhere of Canada other than other like Commonwealth countries. It's the only thing I would say is the exception, is that like I've met a lot of British people who know a lot about Canada, and I don't know if they just, because it's a Commonwealth country, they get like pushed the propaganda of like go here, but they tend to say, oh, I've always wanted to go there or whatever. But it's very uncommon, I would say, that anybody knows too much about Canada. So you're not alone on that one for sure. And I think it's our own doing, if I'm honest. We're just too bashful.
Yeah, and looking at this map, one of the things that really like blew my mind, I pulled it up before, is so like me and my girlfriend had a trip planned that was totally canceled by COVID to Montreal. But then we're like, oh, we're going to go to Montreal. We'll also go to Quebec City. And I'm looking at this.
Oh,
Ottawa
yeah.
is closer.
Yeah.
And it was
Much closer.
not even in the conversation, not even anything we had thought of or known really about. I mean, again, she speaks French a little bit. That's part of the appeal. And you know, Montreal
cool.
and Quebec City are like have like a European vibe. That's what people like about it, right? But I'm looking. This like absolutely blew my mind. So to know it's like this city is closer to us, and it's even closer to Montreal than Quebec City is. So
I know the answer is going to be no to this, but do you know what the slogan for Ottawa is? It's,
no,
Not the formal slogan.
No. But I mean, it's very known.
better.
It's the city that fun forgot. So, so there's kind of a reason why it probably didn't cross your mind, to be honest. Yeah. The wind kind of just blows right over.
I mean, I don't know that much about DC, but Ottawa is our capital city, but it's a government town. Like, it's just full of civil servants, and
It's still a big city, though.
it's still a big city, you know, like
Canada.
it's bigger than a lot of pretty famous European cities like Oslo or whatever.
I think
But
Wikipedia showed 1.3 million. I mean, it's a big city.
Yeah.
It's a big city. However, I'm going to get into like the most boring municipal politics for like half of 1 second. They amalgamated a lot of the surrounding cities. So it's very spread out. And that's one of the things that people come here and they go, oh my gosh, it's 1.1 million people. But there isn't like a very densified feeling in Ottawa. And it's one of the things that makes it great to live in because it's actually kind of affordable for a city of 1 million people. So that's great. But also it's has a lot of green space, I think, as the result of that. So they're working on it because there's a lot of reasons that they need to densify and make housing and all that. But to date, it doesn't feel that much like a big city at all. And because everything kind of like was built around the government workers who work like 8 to 4, everything kind of shuts down at night. So they're working on it. They've just hired like a nightlife mayor and stuff like that to try to revamp our reputation as being incredibly boring. But yeah, that's probably why it's not on anybody's radar.
That makes sense because, like, yeah, DC is dense. So, like, there's our monuments and the mall and all the stuff you've seen, but DC's dense,
Right.
and then Arlington, Virginia's across the river. They pulled back. That was supposed to be the other half. Never happened, but it is dense. Obviously, New York City's dense. Like, but where I live, Akron, if you probably made this a metro region with Cleveland and Canton and the cities around, when it would rank in like the top 10 cities in the U.S., but it's not. So I think that is kind of part of it, and we have a national park between us and Cleveland where the river is, the Cuyahoga. So it breaks it up, and we have a lot of green space. So a lot of that stuff, when you read the numbers, it really depends on how you're, where the borders have been drawn over time. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, I'm looking at like your space and like seeing stuff. So so you're in the city proper, and I've always like when I see your videos and it looks like Canada Day when you did the video where you're riding out of there.
Yeah.
But so you're like we're 10 minutes from green space. It seems like how far of a ride from being like out of the buildings are you guys?
Yeah, we're in an interesting spot. Like on bike, it's like 10 minutes to Parliament, which is kind of like the smack dab center of Ottawa, like Parliament Hill, big malls, big buildings, all that stuff. But we are right where like the bridges to Quebec, which kind of takes you to the green space. We're also 10 minutes to that, so it's great. Like we rarely have to use our car. We're right out the door into trails.
And Gatineau Park. So Gatineau Park is what we mean when we say green space because it's interesting because there's like the
I got it on the
Ottawa,
map. Yeah.
Yeah, so you see the Ottawa River there that just kind of like divides. Parliament sat up right on that basically. And then right when you get across the river, 5 minutes by bike, you're in a national park, which goes for like hundreds of kilometers. So when you see any of our footage where we're riding like paved paths through the forest, like that's accessible to us within about 15 minutes of our place. And because we're right along that river, basically just a bit
Ottawa
like,
River
west of downtown. Yeah.
Okay, that makes so much more sense. I was trying to zoom in on when I was looking on Google Maps early on where the border was, and I assumed it was the river, but now it's actually showing up way better because I must have typed something else in. But yeah.
It's really great to have a bike that can handle a bit of everything where we are too, because I find I mean we have such a buffet. Like yeah, like
Yeah.
you mentioned road riding earlier. You can do a lot of road riding. You can get into some really gnarly trails. You can get into some like black diamond trails within like 15, 25 minutes probably for those by bike. But it's kind of cool. Like you can do
Yeah.
just about every type of riding. So that's I feel like that's kind of what has like molded our love for just all-terrain bikes and stuff like
And
that.
there's a
Is
huge scene here, like I said, of road riding because there is like world class. So in Gatineau Park, there's the Gatineau Hills, and I think it's like I forget, you could get something like 500 meters of elevation through the hills. And so people do like park loops to train. Mike Woods, who won a tour stage this year, he's from Ottawa. He's like
Oh
one
yeah,
of the big racers, but
yeah.
there's a lot of young racers and stuff too.
Mike Woods, yeah,
But
started
there's,
out as a runner and switched to a yeah. He rode for my favorite
yeah.
team, yeah, for a while. So yeah.
oh, did
Anyway,
it? Cool.
Yeah,
go
that's
on.
Nice.
right. Yeah. So he's, and it's always a big thing when he's in town. One time I was riding out to Wakefield, which is one of the little Quebec communities, and someone like yelled at me on the rail trail. They were like, "Mike Woods is coming!" It's just like,
Nice.
I gotta miss away. We're all gonna watch him go. So it's kind of fun. I think he's here every now and then, but yeah, the parkway. So it's kind of like this beautiful scenic place that people drive to see the leaves in the fall, all that stuff through the Gatineau Hills, but they close it to cars. What is it? I think every single day for a certain
Just
period.
about
Yeah.
for pretty much all summer. Yeah.
So huge for road cyclists, and there's tons of like, clubs and stuff that get kids in really early. So there's a huge road cycling community, but there's also a lot of like tech mountain biking, like cross country mountain biking. So there's definitely a buffet of different types
It's almost
of
as if we should make a video about this.
Yeah, I remember the one where you went mountain biking with your friend and you guys were talking about different style mountain biking, and I've seen you guys with your mountain bikes. So there clearly is nearby mountain biking, but how would you say, like, when we talk about whatever, and I hate the word gravel bike and I hate the word gravel biking because I just think
Sure.
they're bikes that make sense. It's like, but I've always said this too.
Yeah.
It's like the term mountain biking. You don't mountain bike
Yeah.
in the mountains. Like those aren't mountains, but that's where you
Sure.
mountain bike, right? So whatever. It's the term
Yeah.
we have. That's why I think ATB is coming about. There is a difference. We could discuss that. Whatever, maybe it is.
Yeah.
It's a blurry line. But how much? Like, I mean, in Ottawa, is there a just to say, like, is there a Rivendell scene? Or people riding crusts? Or people riding sweet bars? Do you see much of that? Bags on their bikes, or
Yeah, so barely like Canada only has maybe one or two crust dealers. I think maybe like I know for sure Dismount in Toronto is a crust dealership.
Well,
I
so
think
use
that's
that more
it.
as so
could
I
be
meant that
wrong.
more as like the genre. So like you have the Bassy
Sure.
Hog's
Yeah, yeah.
Back, which is I think very analogous to crust, right? Or
Yes.
like so seeing people ride those. I just mean that style, like
Yeah.
where it's not like defined, maybe.
Yeah. So definitely far less like that style. Of like these steel all cycling kind of brands. Like far less. Mountain biking is fairly popular here. I'd say probably just about even with road cycling. And like a pretty techy, like again, like government town. There's a lot of money here, and you'll see a lot of like really high end Santa Cruzes and Norcos out there, full suspension, all that kind of stuff. We have a pretty good set of places to mountain bike. It's getting better every year, but also Quebec City, as we mentioned earlier, is about a 4-hour drive, and obviously that's like world class. It's unbelievable mountain biking over there. Yeah, I'd say the alt cycling, like what we're into, you don't see it too much in Ottawa. I noticed it a little bit more in Montreal and in Toronto.
Yeah, way
Uh,
more in
Yeah,
Montreal and
we don't even have a store. Like we barely even have stores to get like Surly and stuff anymore. So like there's a lot of like Trek stores. I don't know if that's like a way to put it, but
So it goes
stores where you
from the high end to like someone who's super niche. There's not a lot of middle ground.
Yeah, and like we have a few friends that like are definitely into all this stuff. Probably riding, they know Rivendales, they know like they're into alt bars, they're into like all that kind of stuff. But it's just very far and few between. I feel like Toronto has more of a scene for it, but
yeah.
Ottawa, not as much. We'd
A lot
love
of
to make
folks
it
here
happen.
really associate, I think, riding with fitness, which is great and it's
Yeah, that's a
amazing.
good way to
But
put it,
that's how the scene has been, and I think that the more alternative scene has been growing. But every now and then we'll be riding around and we'll just get someone like exclaiming from the side of the road, like, I have a Bassie too. And I think it is
Yeah.
because there aren't that many people who are necessarily into it here. And so you see someone else, and you're like, oh my God, another rare creature. So yeah, hopefully it's on its way up. There's a really great skate community here, and I think that that's kind of taken in a lot of folks who might be interested in that type of vibe. Like we mentioned, there's a little bit of a crossover, but we would love to see more people here, you know, enjoying the more leisurely side of cycling, because it's definitely, when you see people out riding, for the most part they're kitted up or they're commuting to their government jobs. So we'd love to see the culture foster a little bit more here.
The Calling in Sick mag guys put it well in that New Yorker article that like skateboarders grow up and get into Rivendell. So sounds like they're just about due for their next
Well,
move.
it's funny. There's a bunch of people in the chat that I've met and known for a while. It's kind of it's the move that's happened. My buddy Dylan in here, who I ride with sometimes from Columbus, Ohio, like he was like a scooter, and he talks about all his friends. He's like, everyone's riding bikes now in like normal clothes, but we've done the same thing too. Like there's a guy we ran into a brewery that had an evasion once and crossed, and we didn't say anything. But the next time he was on a Rivendell, and then I think he felt like we accosted him, and it was just like, because we're all kind of shy too. But it was like, wait, you have both these bikes? We have to know each other, you know? Like, you know?
yeah. Come here. Yeah.
It's the ultimate conversation starter for sure.
Oh yeah, that's why I put Rivendales in our last videos, because like, well, first of all, they're the only dealer in Canada. But I just thought like, I said this in the video. I was like, I've never seen one with my eyes, and it was just so exciting that like, hey, they're here. Like, let's grow this scene in Canada a bit more. You know. Yeah.
I know Large told me Large Marge commented on one of your posts or videos. He said about you guys should go to Nutmeg Nor'easter, which is Ronnie Romance's ride. But
man, it's like a dream. Yeah.
First year,
we were kind of looking at it.
Oh, you definitely should. You would love it. But first year we went there, we were making the joke. I can't remember what percent we were throwing around, but we were saying like, I think 80 to 90% of every crust in Rivendell ever made is at this farm right now. Like, it's definitely like that kind of, you know. And again, not to, and it doesn't matter. I don't care if someone wears kits or if someone shows up on their truck either, or their carbon bike either. But it was definitely, I've never been in a place where it's like all of a sudden you walk into a place and you're like, wow, I'm surrounded by all these people who are wearing regular clothes and riding bikes. It's wild.
Yeah. It's, I mean, every time, I know our exposure is kind of limited here in Canada, but every time I have run into someone, like you said, like, I have a Bassie too, we always, often, I should say, like the same bands, you know, maybe we're wearing a lot of the same, like, clothes, and it's always just like the most like, hey, we're the same person. It's so fun.
It's also like a head's ahead, I think, irrespective of what the thing you're into is, you know, like, I don't know, we were talking about my dad before, and he's a geologist, and like, I just remember growing up, like, forbid that he runs into someone else who likes rocks. Like, there's the next hour of our life just listening to rock talk, but it's the same thing.
As a photographer, that happens to me. Like, I had a girlfriend years ago who would be like, you were supposed to be home for dinner, and I'm like, I ran into a camera nerd, I can't, you know. Like, and that was always the what would happen to me. And this is another thing I wanted to bring up, and I think it's interesting because you got your monsoon in, I think, you said 2018, right? And I've noticed too, like, all the people who came from different scenes, which I'm not one, I just was someone who rode bikes and happened into this kind of stuff, and doing this kind of stream thing helped along the way. But I've also felt like when we're talking about when you meet someone they turn out to be into the music and into like similar dress and then into similar bikes, I feel like it's not happening because it's just a trend. I feel like it's happening because those bikes make sense. So I'd be curious, like, and I know you switched your monsoon to sweet bars, and then Emma, you had a grizzle. So I'd be curious how much more you ride the Hogsback now versus that. Like, because I mean, there is still a fun thing with performance, but I do think like I have a wall behind me of vintage road bikes that I loved and I don't touch because every time I go out, I'm like, well, what if I want to take that cut? You know, kind of.
Right.
Thing, you know, if that makes sense, or if I even phrase that as a question.
Oh no, for sure. I mean, I totally get what you're saying, and like, I mean, I remember the moment I first saw the monsoon, and it was honestly like 27.5 by 2.4 tires and drop bars, and like the widest like biplane fork, all that stuff. I just thought like this thing. My first thought was like, that looks so fun. but also my thought was like that looks rad, and like I'm very what's the word, like visually oriented. I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, like I'm inspired if a bike looks nice to ride it more so. Um, like not that's not the sole reason, but saying that was also obviously you can't deny that that bike looked kind of bizarre. But my first thing was like that looks so fun. And at the time, I was actually riding a Salsa Warbird carbon bike, and I was loving it. But it felt like a gravel race bike. It was one of the earlier versions too, not like the newer one that has more bike packing mounts and all that stuff. So when I saw it, it just felt like it's almost like having different guitars. Like this one's more chunky and it's going to give me a heavier tone. I just thought like that's a really good purpose right there. Like I'm going to have so much fun on this, and it turned out to be very true. Like I get into a lot of trouble with that bike and some pretty gnarly trails, and I've had it set up more as like kind of a speedier race, like aggressive bike, and it's worked well that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like it was a very thought out bike, and I think that's something I just love about All City and I guess now Wild, since they are kind of gone and reborn in a way, but is they were like Jeff Frayne, just his whole mind I thought is just very like, very purpose driven, but also he has a good appreciation for like nice aesthetics and vintage aesthetics and stuff too. So so very much yes to what you mentioned, that like I think it's such a capable bike, and it also looks rad. And then yeah, you and your Grizzle and your Hogsback.
Yeah, I have to quickly talk about the Grizzle because it's funny now. Well, every time I watch one of your videos and I see Aaron's Bumbora, I'm always like, oh, I so badly want one of those. Every time I see it, I'm just like,
he says it every time.
Every time I'm just like, oh, I should get that Bumbora. It looks so nice. And I could, sell my Grizzle and do that, but I can't bring myself to. And it's funny because I don't know if it was the same for the US, but we couldn't get Canyon in Canada until like 3 years ago when I bought that bike. And I think I was just so excited to have access to it. I was like, ooh, German engineering, like the logos look cool. I don't know. At that time, it was more of the aesthetic I was into, and I was maybe a little bit more concerned with performance. But that bike I've stayed with, and I can't like bring myself to get rid of because it is super capable. So I've been toying with the idea of flat barring it and seeing if that gives me a little bit more of like the alt, body position that would be a little bit more fun, because that's the only thing that I find with it. I had it set up to like ride clipped in, so maybe I would put flats on it or like dual-sided pedals or something like that. But it is really I guess because it's from the bike packing category, it's got that really kind of splayed wheelbase, and it just feels like you're so planted. So we take it down Rudy and rocky kind of stuff. We have a video coming out pretty soon where we do what's more like mountain biking kind of trails on the Bassie, and it definitely handled that well. And I think the steel feel is really good through Roots and Rocks and some of that tech. But at the same time, I don't know, there's just something about that Grizzle that kind of has my heart, whether it's like, some of the nostalgia of that was the bike that kind of got me into doing a little bit more ATV style riding and taking rigid bikes a little bit further into like underbiking territory or what, but I still have it, and I wouldn't purchase a Canyon again probably because I find them such a pain to just like everything's proprietary, and they've irritated me a little bit with all that stuff. But that's a great bike.
I'll pull up a picture of the Bassie here while we're chatting. So.
And you mainly ride that rally, right? Like I see that a lot in your videos.
It's my daily driver. It definitely is.
Yeah.
It's so that was the owner of my local bike shop, who I didn't know back then, his bike.
Yeah.
And he bought it because that's a 2014. So like a specific gravel bike wasn't really a thing at the time. And that was one of that and the Salsa Warbird were kind of the first that were like, these are for going out and riding Dirty Kansas, which is now Unbound.
Right.
Dirty Kansas at the time. So
Yep.
he bought that, and he was like, steel bike that's built to have a stable platform and wide tire clearance, which now I can only get 44s, which sounds small. Yeah. So, and that same thing, I've reiterated that bike over and over, but I've left it as my drop bar bike. And then the Gunner has become my, ATV, got 55s and the wide, sweep bars on it. So.
Sweet. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. I've always thought they looked like that rally looks like bomb proof.
I love it too. One thing I had to do is I had to change the fork. I went the opposite as you. I went to the carbon fork because I know you went carbon back to steel. But that bike, I don't know if this is true. I've read from the guy who designed it, but the fork is just super overbuilt, and it's a boat anchor. and it's like I'm not even a
Really?
weenie, but I've
Yeah.
my buddy Pudgy's in the chat. When he was over here once when we met, I'm like, hold this, and he was like, oh my god. And so I don't know if because it's an early disc brake bike,
Yeah.
they just overbuild it, whatever. So that is one where
I,
like the carbon makes a difference, but
yeah. Well, I won't lie and say that like I noticed the exact same thing. Like with my All City, the wild carbon fork was so much lighter. Like I remember doing the same thing to you. I was like, feel this. This is unbelievable.
Mhm.
But the geometry is pretty aggressive on the Monsoon, so I find like you do notice it, but also as soon as you pedal, like that bike shoots underneath you. Like it's a real tucked rear end and stuff like that too. So
how
you do
much
notice it, but you don't.
how
Sorry.
much did you feel the geometry change when you went to those sweeps you put on there? Did you have to really mess with stem length or anything to make that comfortable?
I'm still trying to figure it out. Yeah, so it definitely put me more upright. Actually, I was like kind of joking with you, saying like I look like probably riding now. Like my back's like straight up. And in this video we got coming out, yeah, like I kind of put it down a pretty rough trail, and it felt almost like dangerous. Like I was kind of like shredding down this trail. I didn't really realize they had so much sweep, those bars, but I should have kind of paid more attention when I bought them to like the degrees. But
We almost
um,
should switch bars though. Because
yeah,
the
you
bars that I
got
have
you
on
got
the
the get around
Hogshead,
bars, which
yeah,
are a
the
little
get
less
arounds,
sweet.
and I should probably have more sweep, but I'm so like, speaking of being aesthetically driven or vain about bikes, whatever. It's the stealth colorway, and the guy sold it to me secondhand that way. It's just so perfect with the purple of the bike that I like can't bring myself to change it, even though it's probably hurting my back. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
but yeah, I mean, I find it's tricky to figure it out, and like I don't want to keep buying different stems. I got a lot lying around, but yeah, they might have a little bit too much sweet, but I really do like them when I'm doing casual stuff. I think my problem is I just go on trails that I definitely shouldn't too often, and that's where it gets hairy.
It's funny because that might just be like a fit with that being more aggressive, and the gunner maybe of mine is more relaxed. Because like mountain
Mm.
biking, I've been more confident than I've ever been, and I'm running the Velo Orange granola bars, which are way sweep back for a bike. And
Yeah,
the first time I rode that bike, when same thing, Otis, the shop owner, had that bike, and he did like it, and he traded it to me for work. And when he had drops on it, I hated it. And then he had those
yeah,
carbon whiskey, those crazy mustache
yep,
bars they had. And I'm like, this is
Yeah.
the most fun I've had on a bike in a long time. So I approximated his build, but way cheaper. And now
right,
I'm like bunny hopping stuff on mountain bike trails, which I've
yeah.
never been doing. So it's interesting because I found the sweeps are making me like a more capable rider, but it's probably the different geometry of the bike compared to a monsoon. I would, whereas
Yeah, maybe have a longer top tube, or like maybe slightly kind of slacker head angle. But I was watching I think it was your last video or maybe two videos ago. I can't remember exactly, but you were mountain biking, I think, on that bike,
yeah,
and yeah, it looked pretty gnarly. And I was
yeah,
thinking like that
full
might have
rigid,
inspired
yeah.
our last ride. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that was awesome.
Yeah, we do have a lot. Yeah, and that is a good question because I've watched you guys do. There's techie rock sections when you guys go mountain biking, but are there
Yep.
machine built like more flow trails around there too? Or
There's starting to be. Yeah, there really
That was on
wasn't.
was Crutch for the longest time. It's
Yeah,
like it's known for all the rock jank.
yeah, the
Yeah,
rock jank, it was a thing. I remember Van Girl Yuka and whoever her ex-husband
it was
is.
BCPOV.
BCPOV.
Yeah,
They came at one point and did a video at Camp Fortune, which was at that point, maybe like 5 years ago or something, the only ski hill here that really had trails. And they were just like, this is way too hard. This sucks. It just was such a thing to me, having never ridden out in Whistler or like the areas in BC where there are man-made trails. I think that when I was first mountain biking, because I probably took up mountain biking when I was like 28, and I was just like, oh, I suck at mountain biking. But then I realized that it was just that it was so janky and difficult here, and everybody else had grown up here, riding that kind of stuff. I didn't realize how hard it was. And then more recently, the other ski hills in the area have gotten on board. They won a couple of like competitions for funding and have started to make more purpose-built, like well-groomed and man-made kind of trails where it's actually flowy and you can get some speed and not have to worry that you're going to get yeeted like within an inch of your life. So
yeah,
yeah, that's
break
been
your
really
nose
fun.
apparently, right? Yeah.
Yeah, or
yeah.
break your nose
Oh
in
my
two
god,
places. Yeah.
For those who
yeah,
haven't seen the video, Emma, you went OTB when you broke your nose, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I was in
First
May.
mountain bike of the year.
It was our first mountain bike ride of the year, and we ended the season previously on a high because we got married last year, and then we went to Quebec City to do a bunch of mountain biking, and it was all like rock faces and very rocky kind of terrain. And then I just made the sad mistake of going to ride. I was
Like, I'm a
excited to
pro
ride
now.
rocks again, so we went to the only rocky rock face kind of area around us, and I was maybe a little overconfident.
Oh, we were like 5 minutes into the ride, if that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was brutal.
That's interesting to hear because I think it got shared in a group or something. I made a video last year. It's like this day, like we were out riding in New England, and I titled it like 30 miles of rock garden, and I kind of was like, and I wasn't like putting it down. I was just saying, we were saying like Dylan, who I was riding with, is one of the most capable riders I've ever met in my life, and he was like, can you imagine people came out here with 26-inch wheel mountain bikes and were like, mountain biking's fun because it's just like it's a not put a foot down challenge is what the ride is. And
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
and I get that bikes are more capable now and stuff, but all of a sudden, like this last 2 weeks, I've been getting all these comments like just berating me, and I was like, hey, this is just my experience as someone from a place where there's things that are fun to ride, and like, have you guys never?
Right.
And the other comments are like, you could go ride smooth gravel, and I'm like, don't you know that there's a big spectrum in between this and smooth gravel? Like, I'm not putting down, like, if this is what you got, you've optimized your bike for it, you go out and have fun, awesome. But if you like, you people are unaware that there is also like stuff that you could just like rip around on, like up and down, and on a rigid bike and just have fun, like, so it's really. And I'm like, I try to remind myself, I didn't know everything about biking. I didn't know the spectrum of trails out there. But it's just weird to see the, you guys probably know from putting something out there in the world, what comes back sometimes. You're like, oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like, if anything, like, we mountain bike so much that, like, now I'm reliving that same joy of, like, oh, like this same trail on my monsoon is like so much fun over again, or like this other trail that maybe was not fun on my mountain bike, and actually it was kind of like a bit, I don't know, I just felt like a bike just wanted to go, like an energetic dog. Yeah. And now I'm on my monsoon, I'm like, it's so pleasant, and like there's a whole new type of fun, and I'm like so appreciative of that.
But that is like a pride thing that I totally felt. So when we didn't have any flowy downhill type of riding around here, there was like a badge of honor, because I remember when I was first getting into mountain biking, there would be these really notoriously hard sections. Like there was this one cursed trail that like every time I rode somebody would get hurt, and then they, like, our trail builders, I think, probably saw that or were riding it themselves and were like, wow, wouldn't it be way more fun if we didn't make every turn here try to murder you? And then so many local riders got so mad. They were actually upset that they made the trails easier because they were, the most skilled riders who, felt like it was this big badge of honor that they could ride that. And it was this funny ego thing that existed because it was the only type of riding that you could do. And so there was this kind of like gatekeepy thing of, well, if you can't ride the jank, then you should just not even be on a mountain bike. And I was there like 1 year in with a hardtail, just being like, please, somebody give me a man-made trail that's maintained and has berms so I can learn how to do this thing. So it is a funny thing. I totally respect that some people love jank and love technical stuff, and that's awesome. But there can be a little bit of like a protective, gatekeepy feeling around it. And maybe that's where some of your folks who were, commenting were coming from, that they feel protective, like, no, there's some great things about this, but unfortunately sometimes that like veers into being a bit gatekeepy, I think.
Yeah, where I really don't mind it is if it's like a truly old school trail, like this, like the stuff I was riding, like that's fine. I just don't. I guess the attitude bothers me. It's like, well, some guy said you brought a knife to a gunfight, and it's like, well, I was on vacation, and I was going to ride. I was also going to ride Canal Towpass on this vacation. I brought the bike to split the difference. Yeah. So it's like an old school hand dug trail. I get it. We also have trails that are fully machine built, but then they'll put in these features just so like people could feel like they could justify their full suspension bikes, which annoys me more. It's like, we could have made this fully just fun, but now we've got to justify someone's $8,000, whatever. So, and
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, those people should go to Quebec City because they'll get all the rock slabs that were just there and are very dangerous, and then all the flow. You could just pick your poison and go for it.
What would your favorite ride be? Would it be a mix of everything? Would you get on the Monsoon and the Bassy and like be like, we're gonna head out of town on the streets, hit some bike trail, and then hit some woods? Like that's what we end up doing around here. That's probably my favorite overall ride. Not to lead the witness, but yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like the Monsoon I bought in 2018, and since then I've had like another carbon bike. I've had I think 2 different mountain bikes, and I always go back to the Monsoon, and it's because of exactly what you said. Like, yeah, I'll ride it. We'll go to our favorite coffee shop, but then maybe we'll take like a full hour detour on the way home on some trails, or maybe it's just like a full in the city kind of road ride. Like it's kind of like anytime I'm just on that bike, it's sort of my favorite ride. Like I especially like just leaving out of the house without getting like too much, like, I don't know, with the mountain bike, like I find we always have to like get the hydration packs and like get a couple things going. Like it just feels comforting to me to just go out in whatever Pantera t-shirt I'm wearing and just get lost for a very long time.
Do you say whichever Pantera t-shirt because your closet is just 25 different Pantera t-shirts?
You got it. That's yeah. Oh yeah. That's right.
But yeah, I would say that's definitely our favorite ride. I'm still dialing in the fit on the Bassy, so 100% honesty, like I still gravitate towards that grizzle more. And maybe also it's when we're riding together, like Brendan is, don't tell him I said this, but a little bit faster than me. So I think sometimes the lightness of the grizzle and the fact that it's a little bit faster rolling than the Hogsback with the geometry is nice, because I feel like it's a little easier for me to go at a pace where I don't feel like I'm slowing him down. Not that
I
he's
wait for you.
You do, yeah, but I don't like the feeling of being waited for.
Yeah, I'm sure Erin is in the chat shaking her head yes vigorously.
Yeah,
right now,
relating to that one. Yeah, but usually we would do a mix of different type of terrain and at least a minimum of one good coffee shop along the way. Like we're lucky that when you get into Gatineau Park, if you're, kind of 25K from where we live, there's great coffee shops in a spot called Chelsea, Quebec. So there's always like a really great breakfast sandwich and coffee awaiting us there. And then you could keep going and do like gravel rail trails and farm roads and stuff like that. Or you could, keep it a little bit more chill. So that's usually our go-to type of ride.
Yeah, so what is 25K in American? Just kidding.
Oh, man. Yeah, 60 miles is 100 kilometers. So
I've just been waiting
everyone
to
can
drop
do the math.
Just been waiting to drop a metric joke.
Yeah,
We're the joke. We're the joke. Yeah. So I actually
we haven't
watched.
even talked weather yet.
Yeah.
So that's gonna get
Yeah,
everyone's
real
brains
crazy.
broken.
Yeah. I watch enough bike racing that I do understand the speeds and the distances. But yeah, the weather thing is the one where I'm like constantly. They're like, it's whatever 30 today, and I'm like, was that hot? Like, Let's get into that, because that is one thing on my list that I am curious about, and I did, like I said, I'm such a nerd. I read the Ottawa Wikipedia page, not just because of this. I actually really enjoyed it. So,
Nice.
But
Cool.
it showed, and I'm curious if this is still the truth. So it said there's like snow cover on the ground for, I don't know, named a number of months. Is that still true? Like, once it starts snowing, does it stay covered? Because that was the way it was here when I was a kid, and global warming has changed that. So
It's starting to change it. So, like, you probably read this on Wikipedia. Here, like, for example, we're known for having the world's longest skating rink, and it's basically the canal that runs down through the middle of the city, and it's really awesome. So we've been in Ottawa for 12 years. And it's just a really fun thing to do. You go down right to the middle of the city. Some people commute on it. Like they literally put on hockey skates. They have a briefcase and they're just headed to work. It's the funniest looking thing. Yeah. Yeah. You could fat bike on it. They have they just kind of like plow the snow on the side. It's really cool. But last year, I think, was the first year that they just did not get cold enough for the canal to freeze. And so that's a really clear sign that like, hey, this is happening. But yeah, it was like our winters are still very much like a lot of snow, Montreal too, but it's getting just mushy and really wet kind of We
It's
call it
getting
like brown sugar. That's what we call
Yeah,
it.
it's
yeah.
getting very frustrating because it's like so back and forth and melting so much. And like I fat bike pretty consistently. And if anybody else fat bikes in snow, they'll know it's the most frustratingly temperamental thing where it's like if it's overly slushy, you're just doing the great, like the craziest workout of your life. Or then, it melts and freezes, it's too icy and slippery, whatever. So it's been a tough last couple of fat biking seasons for that reason. But it is, I would say, snow covered from December, maybe more often January
Mid-December.
through to like March.
Yeah, usually around late March, we're like thinking about getting back on our bikes.
Yeah.
But so you're able to ride all winter then, but is it fairly cold still?
Well, so it's actually now becoming awful because it's becoming just rainy and dreary. So it's like staying
Right.
gray, and we get lake effect off Lake Erie even here in Akron. So that could be if it comes straight out of the north, we might get like cold and snow. But it's becoming where when the weather is moving in the typical, west east pattern, that it's just like 30s, 40s, and rain most of the time, and always dark and always gray, and it sucks.
Oh, yeah.
Last year was actually really mild, so like by late winter, we were like riding in short sleeves sometimes. So I'll take that.
Wow.
It's still ugly because there's no leaves on the trees and stuff like that. But it's like, hey, we're out and we're enjoying it. But
Yeah.
then we got one of those polar vortexes where the jet stream dips way down from Canada, and we had like single digits and stuff. That was 3
Oh,
weeks,
interesting.
but it was almost. I think we had 2 major
Yeah.
snows now. It's like, so it's actually turning it into like
Crazy.
it's worse because I'll take snow over cold rain. Like I have a
Yeah.
winter
Yeah, I was
bike.
gonna say, yeah.
I have a winter
Sorry,
bike
go
set
ahead.
up, an old mountain bike that I put studded tires on. And so if there's like the right amount of snow and you could ride down the canal towpath or the bike trails, they don't really plow them here. It's like a lot of fun. So I know you mentioned the fat bike. Do you guys set something up for the winter so you can keep going for a while? Or
Yeah, I mean, like we both fat biked for a while. You've been doing it more the last few winters, but one of the great things again about Ottawa, right, like from Parliament down through the middle of the city, is this huge. It's an old parkway, and they basically turn it into a cross-country skiing pathway. It's like 10 kilometers long, roughly, and it's great. You can fat bike basically also right out of our door, middle of the city. You're going along. You're beside the river.
And the Gatineau Park pathway that I mentioned before, that like the roadies train, well, and we ride all the time too, but that kind of hilly area in the national park that they close off, that's pretty close to downtown, they also groom like all of that. So it's pretty crazy, and it's actually a kind of a tourism draw because you can cross country ski. It stays nicer up there because the elevation, it's a bit colder and a little bit more like consistent. And there's cool stuff like they've got all these cabins built along the way where you could bring a bottle of wine, and there's firewood in there where you can start a fire and cool stuff like that. So that's been great. And then in the last 3 years, I would say the golf courses here have also realized they could make money in the winter by grooming their golf courses for fat biking. So that's been super cool too. Some of them have like some more traily type of sections. Some of them are golf courses that are big and open and windy and miserable in really cold weather, but we've got a good variety of places that you can ride in the winter. It's not like those really cool places in Finland that you can ride absolutely everywhere, but it's getting better.
yeah, it sounds like because Michigan has places we didn't understand them when we did a bike tour there a year ago in July that said fat bikes only. But when they groom the trails, they actually have a minimum tire width, so skinny tire bikes don't ruin the grooming,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah, we
something
got a
that's
lot of that too.
yeah, that was outside of our understanding. And there's a lot of people, speaking of All City, who watch this channel, probably your channel or any bike channel, that are from the Minneapolis area, just because
Right.
the bike culture there is so popular that you draw that demographic. And like now that I followed a lot of those people back on Instagram and see when they're riding on the lakes and riding on these groomed trails, I'm like,
Yeah.
man, the temperature looks rough to me, but I'm like, you would get used to it, and then you get this cool winter experience on your bike that we just can't
Yeah,
have
well,
here.
What you were talking about with your winters being kind of dreary and like you were saying around 30s, which I think is around zero. I'm pretty
Yes,
sure for us.
32 is
Anyway,
freezing.
Yeah.
32 is freezing. So
Yeah. Okay.
so
it's right
30s
around
and
zero.
40s would probably be like up to 10 or whatever, just not.
Yeah. I find when you do go into like minus 20, minus 30, it's kind of just better. Like it's obviously way colder. I find you just get so suited up and you can just handle it. Like you get into the zone of just like it's so cold. Versus that, I find I don't know. Maybe it's just that I screw up dressing for it. I'm like, now I'm cold. Now I'm hot. Now I'm cold. I
I
just
find
give me the cold.
the shoulder seasons are harder, and I struggle with rain a lot because where we grew up in our hometown is frequently like -20, -30 Celsius. Like it's much further north than here, so we're maybe a little more accustomed to that. But you know, that rainier season, the chill gets into you more. It's so much harder to dress for, and I think actually what's great about the snowy winters here and why I like it, everybody around me hates it and I'm always that annoying person who's like, no, winter's great, is you do get the brightness as well. So even though it's dark so early, you get that like refracting like moon and stuff like that. And that trail that Brennan mentioned that they groom along the river for fat biking is quite close to us. So you have these really cool experiences. I'll make videos about it this winter where, you know, you're going along a canal, and the water's still moving because it's a pretty big river, but everything almost looks like sepia. Like it's just everything is sort of like like similar tone, not really monotone, but it feels a bit like you're in a cool otherworldly type of painting or something. So I'm a big fan of that winter riding experience. I think it's pretty unique.
Yeah, when I first got into riding through the winter, and my bike shop owner is like, you need to put studded tires on your bike. That'll help you a lot with the slush. And we did, and we'd be coming down our canal towpath, and the moon was out, and nobody else is out there, because it's cold, and so I don't know the conversion, but below freezing, and just powdery snow, nice and just a couple inches, so it's not like slowing. You could still ride through it because they don't groom the trails. And we all would turn our headlights off, and you're just like riding along, and I'm like, okay, now I understand why this can be a fun thing, you know? So
it's all reflecting off the snow, and it's just so bright out.
It's that thing. I love Scandinavia. It's a little bit of like a pet obsession of mine, but that concept they have of hygge is, I think, so much that too, where you get the adrenaline from cold weather, then you come inside and you do all the cozy stuff, and you have like a hot toddy or something. I think there's like a lot of really good benefits for your mental health too. And I got a fat bike in 2020. We'd had them when back when we were working in offices. We had the great idea to get fat bikes and we'll be able to commute all winter. We didn't realize how hard it was to fat bike, more than like 5 kilometers. So we'd show up at our office like disgusting, sweaty messes. So we'd sold them at that point. And then, come 2020, we got back into it because we're all cooped up. We have these long winters. And honestly, it like saved my mental health. It made me feel sane and gave me that outlet to get fresh air because it is a pretty long winter season that we have.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's what I'm saying. Like and the middle temperatures we get now are horrible because you try not to get sweaty. So if we're going to go and ride and we're going to stop and get a coffee or a beer or dinner, it's like you're trying to modulate that. But it's like, then if it starts raining, you can't go in and stop your ride because it's just, no one wants to be wet. And I mean,
the stops get you. Yeah, no, the stops totally get you. You come back out and you're like, all right, let's continue. Like, well, let's just go home. Never mind.
Yeah. Our buddy Otis, who I mentioned that I got my Raleigh and my gunner from Dirty River Bicycle Works, but he would always we'd be like 3 miles from home. He's like, should we stop in Kenny's Brewery and I'm like, I'm 3 miles from. I am going home. Like I am not going to get accustomed, acclimated to this one more time. Like, no way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I gotta say really quick, some of these comments are hilarious.
Sure, I've been skipping them, but
yeah, I think it was Pudgy that just said, so if I see someone skating around in a hockey jersey, can I fight them? And I have to say, that's up to you. But Canadian hockey players can be pretty tough, so not sure you'll win.
You have to check if they have all their teeth or not. If they have fake teeth, I would say don't fight.
Oh yeah,
that's the marker.
They're willing to lose them. They're willing to lose them again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did have if you got another one, go for it. I was curious too with your videos, to get back to the YouTube thing real quick, with your setting. Is any of the music you put in them, is that original, or are you searching for the?
No. Yeah, I think fairly early on I realized that like the more chill music, I think I don't know if it suited the videos more, but it tend to just, I think relax people more. I don't know if my music's just really aggressive. I could talk music for all day. That's my number one biggest love in life. I was a professional musician for a while, out of high school, and I toured for years. Some of the projects I've been a part of recently are pretty noisy and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
I mean, maybe I'll find the right time for it at some point, but no, everything is just kind of that license.
Finding the stuff.
What's it? Royalty free. Yeah,
Yeah.
just so I can.
We were just talking about this because we both like heavier music, slightly different veins of like preference, but
I love everything.
we
Yeah.
would and we were kind of talking about like why don't we put heavier music in our videos, and sure, like yeah, Brennan could use some of, like you had species at risk, one of the bands you did was like no vocals, that would actually lend itself perfectly, but there's something about having like really big climactic or like heavy music and then you're kind of going like 10 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit like
Yeah, it's not a Red Bull
the right
video.
vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's people ask me about that all the time, and I do feel like it was part of the original growth of my channel, was like spending time on finding music, but I'm like
Yeah.
mostly finding knockoff indie music, or I don't know if you guys know FMA,
Yeah.
Free Music Archive. It's a gamble to use their
Okay,
stuff.
no.
Some of their stuff,
Yeah.
it doesn't really say if it's right protected. When you click on it, it has like a disclaimer, but until you upload, you don't know. And if I really like it, I'm like, oh well, who cares? Give the musician
Yeah.
money. They protected it. I don't.
Right.
I'm not making a living off YouTube. I don't care that much. It's nice to
Sure.
make a couple dollars, but who cares? So just to get more original stuff and have more fun with it, but it is like
Yeah.
one of the most frustrating things. One of the best things I can do is trade with people I know, because I played in bands when I was younger, and so like
Nice.
a lot of them are doing more mellow things now, or more like background things. So I'll like be like, hey,
Yeah.
can I do some photo work to get a couple songs for YouTube videos? But
Yeah.
a lot of times it's just finding the best on YouTube creator music, because a lot of people don't
Same,
have
yeah.
taste, and there is decent stuff on there, and so you find that those few
Yep.
songs that are actually good, here and there. So
Oh man, I put so many hours into finding music. I really enjoy that part of it. And this is really our first year like going hard on YouTube, like kind of really making an effort to kind of build just show what we love. That's kind of what we're always say. But the music's like something I always come back to. Like maybe next year I can make a push to do exactly what you said. Like find some local bands that I could feature, or like maybe I could, because I mean I don't just listen to like heavy music. I love everything. And like maybe I could write some stuff that can like fit into this or that. So yeah, that's something that's always in the back of my mind, and I love that. And I'm always, even your channel too, I'm always listening like, oh, that's a really cool song, like what is that? And sometimes I'm pulling out Shazam or whatever.
yeah,
Like
You've done some cool stuff with like taking even like the guitar out though for certain
Yeah.
sections, like
Yeah,
you'll
actually-
just leave it drum and bass and like take some of those royalty free things,
Yeah,
and
with,
like, tweak it a little.
with Epidemic Sound, I've literally like cut the songs up, and I was like, I don't like that bridge, and then I'm like rewriting the song. You can get the stems, so I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take that keyboard part right out, and I've made their song my own.
Your first started DJing.
Yeah.
it's
I
funny
do have a
because
lot.
out of laziness, if I have like a 20-minute video and I'm trying to find songs to fill it, even if they're just going to be a music bed behind it, I have started. Are you Adobe users, or what do you cut your videos with?
Final Cut.
I'll find it. So I don't know if Final Cut has this or not, but Adobe has like an extend song thing where so you could take a 4-minute song and make it a 7-minute song or whatever.
Interesting.
It'll just pick spots. So instead of like you sitting there and trying to cut the song back together and make it longer, Adobe will do that for you. It's called their remix tool. And if my voiceover is going to go over 50% of it, I'm like, this song's not going to get old. So that's something that's really helped me
Whoa.
a lot.
Another reason
Yeah.
I got to get off Final Cut.
It's like it's jam banding it. It's turning it
Yeah.
into like a Fish live performance
Yeah.
for you, or that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, so if I was actually at a Fish concert, I would try and murder someone, but for just a background of music on one of my videos, I could do it.
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that. There's a knockoff Fish band here in Ohio from outside Columbus, and we were at one of their shows when we were younger, and I just remember my friend's description of it being, it's like they took your favorite part of all your favorite songs and played them over and over again until it's boring, and
Right.
that's my mentality on jam band. So, anyways,
Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not like a deadhead or anything like that.
yeah, you
Yeah.
gotta make your point make your point and move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. I mean, I toured with a pop band. It was very much like get to that chorus.
It was
So
only the point.
yeah, it was all point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, don't. My cat's going for my headphone cord. No. So I had another one on here that So when I first started doing live streams, I was still getting on my vintage bikes once in a while, but I'd started to transition a couple into like squeezing the maximum clearance and then putting some drifters on them and stuff like that. But I would always talk about them. We would look up and people would bring it up and I'd pull up on the stream, like, what would your dream bike be? And back then it was like so easy because I would just look at like a Team 711 Eddie Merckx and I'd be like, I love that colorway.
Right.
It's the best tubing they made at the time. And so I've been thinking of this lately, and with like being like ATB gravel bike, I don't know what my answer is. And I mean, there's like great custom builders out there like Chapman, like Wild has that new Sugarfoot, which blows my mind.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm
Super
smart
cool.
enough to have any of those like bikes custom built for me. Like, so let me
too.
pose that to you. Is there something you, either of you could say would be your dream bike right now?
Well, aesthetically talking, for the longest time, number 22, I think it's a Drifter, was it?
Yeah,
I think
Drifter
that
is
was the
their
model,
main
but
like gravel bike. Terry Berenson
Yeah.
rides a Drifter.
yes.
Decline's
Yeah,
new
and
bike is the Drifter, the much upgraded
Yeah.
version of that. Yeah.
he got like the custom fenders too.
Yeah.
I for the longest time I just thought they were the most beautiful bikes ever, and I believe they're founded in Toronto, but I think they're still made and assembled everything in America. If
They're
I'm
in
not
New York.
mistaken.
I think they're in upstate New York, right?
Okay, I thought
Am
there
I
was
wrong?
something. Maybe someone in the comments could.
Yeah.
There was a Toronto aspect to it, I think. Regardless, that didn't play a big role in it. I just thought they were extremely gorgeous. I thought they were super
Titanium.
cool looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like even the way they did like the seat posts and like all their stems. I just thought like it's kind of funny saying that because like I am super huge into my Monsoon, which looks nothing like that. But yeah, for some reason that bike has always held like a big place in my heart. Aside from that, there's like a handful of like I've been really lusting over the Crust Scapegoat for a long time, and I really liked like the first one that had like this really cool like pretty much black metal looking aesthetic to it.
Or like the dragon scale.
Yeah,
or
and it was
something
like
that,
it had
yeah.
like this really cool like goat's head badge and stuff. So aesthetically, like that one a little bit more actually. I like it also because of its capabilities. I just think I find there's so many ATV bikes that are very close to hardtail mountain bikes, and this one still has like the big head tube, so you got more room for frame storage, stuff like that. So honestly, a Scapegoat is still very much on my mind as like maybe I can make that happen next year or something like that. But it's also slips into dream bike territory. So those are kind of mine. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have one on my list right now. I used to have the dream of getting a Juliana mountain bike when like I was previously a little bit more, maybe I was riding like 60% mountain bike, and then one of my friends got a Juliana, and just we're both very much like intermediate riders, and she was like, that was a way overspend. Like I do not feel any of the differences in capability, and I know that I would have probably the same experience, but honestly the Crust Bombora is the thing that's kind of been the fixation for me.
I think your bike is
The
Aaron's
Hogsback
bike
is my
your dream
the
bike.
Hogsback is my first steel bike, and I had obviously like the Grizzle, but other like more traditional gravel bikes, really lightweight aluminum or carbon, whatever, and even have had like cross bikes in the past, even though I've never done cross. But I would like to try a steel bike that's more of like a speedy type of geometry, as opposed to, the Hogsback is a great, more of like a touring-ish kind of bike, or like all-road bike. So that kind of thing I think would be really interesting, and what's up on my list next, probably.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know if you saw it earlier. Erin was in the chat and she was like, her Bombora, she was talking about, oh, I've been looking at those Bassies. So again, but the grass is always greener. But she's also her, because the Bassies, are they made, is that a Montreal company?
Yeah, Montreal company, yeah.
So I'm sure that's part of her, draw to them, and
Yeah,
really.
I mean, if you guys make it there, you'll have to visit CL because it's that's their headquarters, and like it's a shop, and you can just see and touch and try all the Bassies. So yeah,
we were laughing when we went in there because there was an awesome staff member who helped us out, but I like brought the Hogsback in at one point, and it was just that moment. It felt like a scene out of like Portlandia or something, where we were like, so just having a conversation. Like they're so passionate about the bikes, and they know so much about it. And I felt almost silly as the one riding it, because I was like, oh, now I realize I know absolutely nothing about this, but such a cool experience because it's such an amazing shop and they're so passionate about their product that and I think everything too, they kind of designed to have like a, you know, a DIY type of quality where you build it up to serve whatever purpose you want. So that's really cool too. It would be a neat experience if she does get one eventually to like make the Montreal trip that didn't
Yeah.
happen.
I think she would make it. That's where she would probably buy it. But by the way,
Yeah.
Large did jump in here and say Bryce Gracie is co-founder of Number 22 and lives in Toronto. So
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. Yeah, and I swear at one point on their site it said like designed in Toronto. So maybe it was
Yeah.
just like, yeah, just product
sense.
design. But yeah, cool.
yeah, I'm interested because at Nutmeg this year, I know Terry B is going, and he was live streaming. And
Oh, nice.
I said, are you going to Nutmeg this year? And he said, yeah. And he pulled up the bike he rode last year, and he's like, I think I'm going to bring my Number 22 this year. I'm like, awesome. That's
Oh,
the bike I
sick.
want to see because I didn't get to see it last year. He's riding a Russian-made Sire, which is a
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
interesting looking carbon
really
thing.
cool.
But yeah, so I'm like, I'll finally get to see the Number 22. So
So cool. Yeah, and I gotta say really quick, like Harry B, I'm like such a huge fan. Honestly, he's probably one of the YouTubers that has inspired me the most to like just get out there and like I don't know, not try and fit in any kind of mold, but just do it any way we want. Like I love his channel and think it's just like yeah, just so well done. I really enjoy it.
I think one of the things that's probably mutual is that we're all like a little we work on the creative side of the spectrum. That's what we do, and I think that's where I hit it off with Terry as well. It's like there's this level of he's making like content he wants to make, but he also like he cares about the results. Like I know you guys put a
Yeah.
lot of work into the edit. Like it's very apparent, sound design, all this kind of thing. He's a cinematographer by trade, and so last year at Nutmeg when I got to meet him, I'm sitting at a picnic table after the ride, and like the one guy was, you know, a data wrangler guy, and you know, so it was just one guy was production, one guy was a grip. So I got to sit around with all these people. It's like, oh, this is my world outside of bikes,
Right.
you know, and so
Yeah.
they're very and he's just as cool and comes across just as laid back in real life as he is. Like that's who he is.
Nice.
He's just like a good dude, you know. And he also
so cool.
and he also likes some of the techie stuff that I don't care about, and it's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That just shows the spectrum of what you can do on bikes and still be, you know, cool with people. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
he did that ride across the country, and he decided he's going to wear sandals and ride a Brook saddle because he's like, I want to see
Yeah.
like the Ronnie side of things, and just went and did that.
Yeah.
you
Oh
know?
man, I was so into that. I was working in an office at that point and had it on like my phone on the Twitch stream, and that was
I was
so
really
awesome.
deeply invested in watching the progression of the sandal tan. It was
Yeah.
like a real riveting component of the whole saga to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's man. I'd fanboy so hard if I met Terry B. Maybe that's the Canada in me is like, you know, we go to America and we're like, holy smokes, this is different. But like, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be able to like
You're
when
doing it already.
when we do make it to Nutmeg, I'm gonna probably be like, I don't know. I don't know if I can handle this, to be honest.
I think that's
Sometimes.
the good thing of when you meet someone like, you know, like the whole, and they're just normal. It's like, oh, just
Yeah.
totally normal dude. Like, you know.
Yeah.
And last year was kind of cool because the weather conditions were totally insane at Nutmeg, and so
was it?
it brought together this all in it together mentality. So I ended up riding like the whole second half with them, but there were like puddles like 3 feet deep, and we're just out there like.
Oh my god.
And some people were like, there was a couple people who were complaining, you know, it draws New York, you know, people are only used to the
Yeah.
city, and or some people are like, oh my god, I don't know how we're gonna get through this, and like him and his crew like had the same mentality as me and my friends, like let's just laugh and ride bikes, we're in it now, you know. So
Yeah, you came all this way. Yeah.
and that's not that far for you guys. I mean, I think it's same distance for us. I mean, not that far, but
Yeah,
7
3 or 4 hours.
Oh,
No,
less.
it was
Yeah.
7 hours.
Oh, 6. Okay, sorry.
Six.
Vermont's like 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, we
We're-
could get into Vermont really quickly, but I think to get to the actual location when I looked at it was like 6 or 7
Yeah.
hours driving.
I mean, the border, like the U.S. border, is a 45-minute drive from
Mm-hmm.
our house. Like, it's actually really not that far.
Yeah.
It'd be Ogdensburg, New York.
Yeah, Connecticut's on, like where the race is pretty much on Long Island Sound, so you're all the way to the East Coast, basically. So
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Hey.
yeah, still not that far.
this guy's trying to chew on all my wires. so.
That's a guilty face.
Yeah. He's my little alley cat. I found him out there last December and tried so hard not to adopt him, but then one night I'm laying in here when it gets into the 20s Fahrenheit, I'm like, how cold can cats get? And then
Yeah.
there I am out grabbing him. And yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah,
Just never
would have done the
left.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think? What time is it? We're probably getting pretty late. Or should we wrap it up? Or what else? Is there any other comments you guys saw you want to chat about?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I can go all night.
Yeah.
We're let's see, the demonic crust. That's funny.
Yeah, some people were asking about your amps.
Oh yeah, people
Oh,
ask about my guitar.
Look like Fender
Yeah.
Deluxes, are they?
This is a 1962 Fender Bassman. It's like my
Oh.
pride and joy.
Oh, it's actually
Actually,
truly vintage. It's not a
Yeah, yeah. That's I won't get super far into it, but
Oh, go for it. Go. We have music fans.
very
here.
yeah. I'm a huge guitar nerd and like drum nerd, and like the big love of mine. I have a couple of vintage instruments. This is probably my favorite amp of all time. But I drove to Montreal like one afternoon, just straight there and back, just to pick this up because it was such a good deal. But yeah, 1962 Fender Bassman. This is like a custom handmade.
That's your dad's Buddha.
It's my dad's amp, actually. Yeah, I'm just borrowing it. But I do have a deluxe as well. That's kind of in storage right
I have
now.
to
that I
be-
use a lot for.
I have to be honest. I wouldn't have known that Fender in '62 was making speaker cabinets that big because you look at the Super Beatles they built for them, box built for the Beatles.
Yeah.
In the mid '60s, they're only about that big, right? Aren't they?
Yeah, well, they got bigger like in there was a transition. I'm a real Fender nerd
Yeah.
buff, but in like 63, 64, they got even bigger. But like this one had just a 15-inch speaker before this, and this one here is two 12 inches, I think. It's pretty big. It's also standing on its side. I'll
okay.
say that.
Oh, yeah, that's why the
it's-
logo's.
Yeah, it's one of those like lean back cabs. But yeah, like Leo Fender was like involved in making some of these amps like at that time. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I had a couple vintage guitars as well, and yeah, they're kind of hidden around the room here. But
That's the thing that you're nerdiest about.
yeah, and like again, as I mentioned, I spent some time touring after high school, and got very lucky. I toured for like 4 or 5 years. I toured with the Backstreet Boys for like 2 of those years, playing drums in an opening band. Got to we didn't really play too much in the States. We toured all of Germany and the UK. I got to sing the Canadian anthem at the NBA All-Star game in 2012. That's on YouTube. It's really
Oh,
funny.
wow. Oh, no
really
way.
weird moment. But yeah, like I'm a bit of a one-hit wonder in Canada. Like I was in a band that went to #1 and then literally kind of fell off the face of the earth. So we had our moment where our video went #1. We tried to make it a bit in the States and didn't really work. But then I drummed a bit on one of the Backstreet Boys solo projects and got to play like Good Morning New York in New York City and do some gigs with him. So it's a bit of I have a really kind of longer than, I mean, I've been biking my whole life and it's equally as big of a love to me as music. But yeah, I have a pretty deep history with like chasing my dream musically and then kind of coming down off that. And now like I love it and I still write a lot. I record for people. But yeah, I've collected some fun instruments along the way.
Yeah, so I played it like that was my whole entire goal, late teens and 20s, to be in a band that
Nice.
could be just sustaining. It could be touring small clubs. It didn't matter. It was just like
Yeah.
so we'd be doing nothing else. I'm not a talented musician, but I'm like my best friend who was a guitar player was, and he just drilled it into me. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
sitting on the chair face to face, and he was like, nope, you forgot the first part. Let's go back and do it again.
Right.
And it was just like over and over and over. And like, so
Yeah.
I have a sense of rhythm, so I could do it. I learned enough of our favorite songs that I understand the blues
Yeah.
scale, and we were a punk rock band, so it's not like I needed to,
Oh,
know,
yeah.
like I
Just-
didn't need to
just go.
improvise. Yeah. We're still
Yeah.
playing like really fun bass lines. Like, it's way more like, the Beatles or the Jam and then just amped up type stuff. But yeah, so I've always been fascinated with music. It was the same. That's my first love. Like, riding a bike was just what I did, and I loved bikes, and I didn't know a thing about
Yeah.
them. I just rode them. You know what I mean? It was like,
Right.
I love the wind in my face, and I like being out on the trail, and it's what I do when I'm not
Yeah.
in a basement. So yeah, playing music. So
YouTube's such a cool thing that way. We were talking to some friends about it recently, that it's like this convergence of so many different interests, and it sounds like it's the same for you, where it's like, videography and music and bikes, and you can kind of like bring everything together as a fun smorgasbord and kind of do it your own way. So it sounds like you've kind of had a similar journey in that way too.
for sure, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you played guitar.
Bass player, yeah.
Bass. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And were you like a precision bass or a jazz bass
Jazz
guy?
bass,
Or?
yeah. Fender jazz
Nice.
bass, yeah. And based on
Fun.
looks, not based on,
Yeah.
putting like the thought into like the way it was going to sound. It was like the spaced out pickups
Right.
looked right for me. I mean, I always wanted the
Yep.
Rick because we loved British stuff, so
Yes.
I always wanted one of
Yeah,
those like classic
totally.
Rickenbackers, like the real flat ones. What was 3000
Yeah,
ones
yeah.
or whatever. It shows it's fading.
Yeah.
My memory is now fading at this point, but
Yeah.
yeah, like an all
Geddy Lee's favorite.
Yeah, yeah. Lemmy too,
Yeah.
So
Totally.
saw Lemmy on his last tour up in Detroit. Actually, went up and saw
Oh, really?
Motorhead in Detroit with two buddies, and then he died like 2 months after that. So
Whoa.
you know,
That's crazy.
we were like, thank God we
Yeah,
went.
that's-
Beautiful theater in Detroit, the Fox Theater. So
Oh wow, yeah. I have the opposite where I wanted to go see Tom Petty, and we decided for some reason like, oh, we couldn't make it. And same thing, he played in Ottawa, and it was like maybe 3 months after he died, and I was like, well, I'm never gonna let that one down.
yeah.
Yeah.
Aaron was just giving me shit because we rode through Cleveland and we heard can't remember what Tom Petty song was playing, but it was clearly live, and I was like, is this a cover band playing? And I was just thinking like, it's clearly not a DJ, and I was thinking out loud. She goes, well, I think it would have to be because I'm not sure if you've heard the news. And this is just 2 months ago, and I'm like, oh, fuck you.
Yeah. It's amazing. People are asking, was this band Sum 41? No, I was not in Sum 41.
But he is actually Avril Lavigne, so
Yeah,
that
someone
is
said,
accurate.
am I Avril Lavigne?
Are you Avril Lavigne?
Oh, someone figured it out. Yeah.
But fun fact, Canadian fact, we are from the same hometown as Shania Twain.
Yes.
Ah,
Yeah, we're from
oh.
a very remote. Actually, if you want to pull this up on a map ever, we're from a town called Timmins, Ontario, and it's very far.
So north it hurts.
Yeah, we always say so north it hurts, but that's where Shania Twain's from. She's our girl.
Yeah,
It's our,
just on the welcome side.
our big claim to fame.
So let's see.
But,
I do have it up here. So
Yeah, it's out there.
aren't you supposed to say oot there?
Out there, yeah. I always found Americans like
We just are-
version of
Yeah.
they always miss the mark. I mean, it's almost like they just get the Newfoundland accent. That's
No,
kind of
it's
close to
not,
it.
No, I think it's more similar to the Albertan accent.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
'Cause that has like a Montana kind of cross.
And if you watch shows like How I Met Your Mother,
Yeah.
what's that character's name? She's a
Robin.
Canadian.
Yeah.
Robin. Yeah. Like I'm always like, no, that's not how we sound.
Americans
I don't
miss
know.
the mark on a lot of cultural things. I'm not sure if you noticed that. So
Well,
the Canadian,
I don't know.
our Canadian accent is probably the least destructive one of those missing the mark.
Right. I mean, there's nowhere in America that's kind of. I mean, maybe almost Fargo a little bit.
Yeah,
That's
it's like
almost
Wow.
Canadian.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of getting close to Canadian sounding, but I don't know. You just got to get a little. You got to throw a lot of like theirs in your sentences, like there, you there, come here, there, over there, and there. Those.
Call everyone bud.
Yeah, hey, bud. Yeah, buddy
Bud.
was just ripping on there. Like that's how you get real Canadian.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I was thinking like some people who are younger than me get offended by the guys, and I always say like, and I think I even like might have wrote you two guys, and I'm like, oh, that's gender neutral to me. That's growing up in
Yeah.
the '90s as dudes. Like I
yeah,
would never think of like that as being like, oh, I'm not talking about guys. And again,
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
almost captures, because I have one of my best female friends. We almost exclusively call each other dude, but there's something just about like the person and their vibe that captures. Some people are buds, some people are dudes.
yeah,
Some
or
people
even
are
their dude buds.
They could be dude buds.
Yeah.
Someone Thrifty Frame Builder said you sound like Minnesotans.
Yeah, I think he's from our area too. So I mean, he should know.
Yeah. Upper Peninsula. Yeah, I guess there's an accent in the UP for sure, but I think it's the Upers have a unique twist on it. So
Canadian accents are like Boston accents. I don't know if they sound the same. I think maybe they have a level of intensity that's kind of similar, but I think they
yeah, Boston's
I think they're
pretty.
kind of
Yeah, Boston
pretty
and New
intense.
England are you think of the JFK and or the modern working
Yeah.
class version. I wouldn't associate with what I think of as Canadian as much. So
But I will say though, Newfoundland accents are next level.
Oh,
Those are
they're
really
chef's
funny.
kiss,
Yeah. I mean they're amazing. But that like I always say like if you hear that like that's a very distinctly fun Canadian thing. And then as you get to Montreal, like they got the French kind of tinge thing.
Well, French Canadian is so unique too because it's kind of like someone described it to me once as you take French culture and like put it in a time capsule that you buried, because it's so it is isolated in like geographically obviously, but culturally as well in some ways. So there's a lot of ways that French Canadians speak that if you had a real like Parisian or like French kind of way of speaking, you might almost be like you're speaking different dialects or something.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's
Especially
interesting.
where we're from, Northern Ontario, there's a lot of French up there, and it's like I don't know, like a cigarette in a coffee cup kind of French. It's just rough and
Beautiful in its own way.
yeah, it's beautiful in its own way. It's just really like harsh, gritty. Yeah,
So when you just say French, you mean French Canadian.
pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah.
Yeah,
So it just means French speaking. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and like where we grew up in the north was really close to the Quebec border as well, and there were a lot of people in our hometown, even though it was not in Quebec, that didn't even speak English. So
Yeah.
it was very, very kind of mixed together.
How would like an Ohio accent be defined? Because obviously I could think of like New York, or I could think of like a surfer from California. Maybe
So-
I'm just making an American stereotype.
No, you're not. I mean, like there is that laid back, like true California accent. There is the New York and New
Right.
Jersey, which are variations, which bleed into the Boston and New England thing. But they say like when they make like sitcom TV, like it is the Midwest, like now we're not considered the Midwest anymore, but the Great Lakes accent that they use on things. So for me, it's very hard to hear at all because it's also just mainstream Hollywood is
Yeah.
the way we speak. So I can't. Like,
Yeah.
It's such a weird. Not that anyone hears their own accent, but especially when it's the Hollywood version of way of speaking as well. Really
Yeah.
doubles down on like making everything else sound different. So
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and then the California stuff comes in and out of style like it did in the '80s. Like everyone was speaking like a Californian, and whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I think whatever's the trend at the moment tends to come up. Like a show hits from Canada or Minnesota, like Fargo or any of that stuff. It's all.
Someone says Philly accents in Alabama are potent.
Yeah. Yeah, Philly does have a pretty. I've been out there and definitely heard that as well.
Yeah. Canada's got a lot of accents. Yep, I agree.
Yeah, we do for
Uh,
sure.
As it-
Alabama's potent. I have family in Alabama, and that is a very distinctive accent for sure.
it's funny because being like northern, like when you hear the southern accent, to me, I have like this thing I need to shake of it. It sounds uneducated. So even like what used to be like the higher class, like the of southern accents, they still like you'll see someone. I'm like, this is a person that looks like me, then that comes out of their mouth, and I'm like, oh, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, and it's totally
so
false. It's just a regional thing, but
Yeah.
Right.
That's so interesting because, like, yeah, my dad's family is American, but his dad, who was like a mathematics professor, super smart guy, was from Charleston. So he had that like kind of like whistly, almost like Southern way of speaking. And so for me, actually, I feel like I always associated, and my grandma's from New Orleans, and they were like very much the kind of educated part of my family, and then my mom's family was like much more blue collar. So I think that I always associated that Southern accent with almost sounding refined in some way.
Huh,
but
yeah.
I hear what you mean too. There's obviously like different types of Southern accents and all that.
Some Newfie accents going on in that too. What do you have, by?
Yeah, it's very close to an Irish accent. Yeah, we have a really good friend here who's a proud Newfoundlander, and he's taught us a bunch of the lingo, but it's definitely like its own language.
Yeah.
how about as you go? Do things change as you go like way north? Because that's one thing that is so different about Canada versus the States.
Mhm.
Like you look at the size of the provinces, but like it almost doesn't look like the borders even. They just kind of extend all the way north, right? It doesn't like
Yeah.
Yeah.
it just like does that become like totally like when you had like well you showed where you guys are from, which is starting to get up there a little bit, right? But still
Yeah.
Great Lakes region. But
It's north for Ontario. Yeah, for Ontario, it's kind of like the tip, and then I mean, well, sorry, not the tip. Like there's a lot of indigenous communities and reserves up there. So
Mhm.
that's kind of you see and hear a lot of that up there as you
And
get
different
really far
mining
north.
locations and stuff. Like our hometown is a mining town, and lots of our friends that still live there have partners that work for mining companies that go and do like 8 days out, 8 days back kind of thing, because they're at fairly remote, sometimes even like fly-in only type of locations and stuff like that. And myself, I haven't really been to any of those communities, but I've seen a lot of the pictures and heard lots of stories that it's very different. Like as you get further north than Timmins, it's just so isolated from everything that the cost of goods is crazy.
Oh,
It's harder to come by resources. Canada's crazy too, where like we have a lot of issues with like how we take care of our Indigenous people. So some of those reserve communities out that way up by James Bay don't even have clean water. So there's definitely a lack of resourcing.
Have you tried just erasing them completely? That worked mostly for us. I'm just kidding. That's
For
horrible.
America.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
that's
don't-
literally
don't-
what we,
Canada did try.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't look up the residential school system story
Oh, yeah.
because they tried.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that went. I think one of the last residential schools went all the way into the 90s. Like,
Oh, really? Yeah.
it's really not that far back. So yeah, we kind of see the reverberation of it still.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, in Canada, I think for a long time, kind of like skated around on the like, oh, we're the friendly Canadians. Look at Americans, they're the bad ones, and really didn't like look inward or talk about like a lot of our history, which is equally bad in many, many ways.
When we were mountain biking in Quebec, actually, in Quebec City, we took a day to visit the old town of Quebec City. It's one of the oldest cities in all of Canada. So we're reading some plaques and stuff, and it's like, yeah, this is where this battle happened. And I'm like, oh, interesting. And I'm reading more, and I'm like, oh my god, oh wait, like, oh geez, that's like a brutal slaughter of like all these like the Indigenous people who were there before. And I'm just like, God, that's kind of crazy that we're all just here snapping photos.
Yeah, and then the road is named after the white dude who slaughtered everyone, right? You know?
Yeah. And I'm thinking like, oh, like how do I feel on this trip now? I'm like, that's bizarre, but like, yeah, I mean, again, it's extended even into the 90s. Like,
Yeah.
it's bizarre. So.
But yeah, Canada's landmass is crazy. It's huge. And even like, my parents live in Thunder Bay. We made a video out there
Very
last
close
year.
to Minnesota.
They're
Yeah,
super
right by
close to
Duluth.
Minnesota, and it's like, I have to take a plane to see my parents. Otherwise, we'd be driving for 17 hours. Like, and they're not even necessarily super far north. They're close to, what's the city? The big American city.
Duluth, Minnesota
Yeah.
is pretty close.
Yeah.
Close to Duluth, but out that way, there's tons of small communities, and the northern region is definitely really different. But like where we're from is very flat. Out like northwestern is where it's a little bit nicer. Like Thunder Bay has got beautiful national park and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. I see where that is. Still a little bit of a hike from Duluth, but yeah, in the scheme of things up there. Yeah, we saw Superior for the first time a year ago this summer, and I was just blown away. I mean, it's like super cold, obviously, because it's so deep, but it looks tropical, like on some of the islands in the summer, or when like we were there in the fall, but there was still a lot of like leaves on the trees, and it was like you could see like right through to the rocks, and I was like, oh. Superior is nothing like Ontario or Lake Erie. This is an entirely different, it's just entirely different. The Northwoods and that whole area is just amazing.
What part were you visiting?
We went on Grand Island, so we had crossed over through the UP, the Upper Peninsula, and over the big Mackinac Bridge. And so, because we were going to Hodag, Jeff Frane's event.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we almost went to that. It was in August?
Yeah. Early September, late August.
Or maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we didn't go this year. It
we
was a year ago, but yeah.
Okay. We had because actually, I forget if it was when I bought my fork or something, there was a flyer put in, and I kept it. I was like, we should go to this.
We were like,
it's pretty
that's close
cool.
to my parents, and we realized, like, no, it's...
You gotta drive around.
There wasn't really a bridge, so it was a whole situation where it looked like it could be quite close, but unless you were going to paddle over, not necessarily. But I've heard that it's beautiful on the American side.
Yeah, even for us, it seems like you were like, oh, it's just through Michigan. Michigan borders Ohio. To get up to his event was farther than the East Coast is for us. So it just doesn't feel like that, but it is a hike. And that's why we spent a whole week doing it. So we stopped right before the Mackinac Bridge and camped there one night, then drove to the event, did the event, then we went to Grand Island in Superior. And so and then stopped in Michigan and mountain biked on our way back. But we had to turn it into a thing. We're like, this can't be a weekend away. This is not really that
Right.
close at all, you know. But yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
stunning. And Jeff was like an absolutely amazing host.
That's
So
so cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. His routes were great. They were old forest roads, and halfway through, everyone stopped at this one bar and just like hung out there for like a half an hour. So again, like the non-competitive thing, those kind of
Yeah.
rides are just, I love it. You know, it's like people are just camping
Oh,
and
that's
hanging
so
out
cool.
and looking at each other's
Yeah.
bikes, and you know, yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, one day when we figure out a way to go get to this stuff, like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna probably like die. I'm just a happy person. But like,
That was one other thing I was going to ask. Do you guys do other events around Ottawa, or do you travel for other events, or is it mostly just riding
No.
on your own? Like,
yeah, I mean, not too often. I'm pretty introverted, to be honest. I don't really do much like group rides. We ride with friends, whatnot. I really do want to break out of that more, though. I think honestly, like, it's probably just like some anxiety I deal with, and like I never, but also I never really kind of gave it a good try. So
Yeah.
maybe it's like a 2025
Mhm.
New Year's resolution.
Yeah, we haven't done much of it, honestly.
Yeah.
my group is like the group that's in my videos, very introverted group too, but like very close. And so when we're together, we're able to talk to other people. So that's kind of what really helps out to go into this stuff,
Yeah.
to go and do it together. But then I've always told people, because I get this comment all the time, oh, I wish I had a group like you, or like sometimes you go on these things and it's like I'm the same. I'm not like a super outgoing person either in real life, but if I have something in common, so I just say the decline thing. Like you find yourself feeling uncomfortable, just ask someone about their bike. Be like, oh, I like your
Right.
bike. What kind of cranks are those? Like just just
Nice.
default to the the stuff we have in common. It's like you probably like when you work with people, you end up saying stuff
Yeah.
and getting into these conversations that you would find it hard to have in real life, and it's because you
Yeah.
have work to fall back on. So like when you hang out with other people with bikes, fall back on the thing you have in common.
The
which
common
is bikes.
interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I also think like, we do have group rides here in our area. They exist, but like everything else we've said, a lot of mountain bike stuff, a lot of roadie stuff. Like get up at 6:30 in the morning. It's gonna be like a pretty intermediate ride, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm not joining that. I'm like on
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
like huge
Yeah, a
650
lot of like
B
minimum
wheels.
speed and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
so
but-
there, I mean, probably a huge opportunity for us to create these types of things. And there are
Yeah.
some group rides in our area that are suitable for us. But yeah, there hasn't been much for years. Like maybe in the last year, there's been some new ones.
Some
But
folks are starting to do like coffee outsides and stuff like that,
Yeah,
though.
I
And
think
we've
we just
been
got like
talking
our
about next year we gotta get ourselves organized to be able to do it too. I think that's it for me.
Yeah.
I'm a highly disorganized person, so I'm the perpetually at least 15 minutes late girl. So I feel like that's part of it. I don't want to keep people waiting, but when
Yeah.
it's something more casual like that, I think those things would be good fits.
Montreal has a great coffee outside too, actually.
Yeah.
With Assy bikes, like the owners of that, and
Mhm.
CL Cycle, they do a nice coffee outside. I've been meaning to try that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
yeah, there's a couple bike shops here in Akron area and then up in Cleveland that have really pushed the community thing, and that's what's so great, and that it's the come as you are mentality, the alt cycling type thing. It's like it doesn't matter if you're the one in Cleveland, like they're deep into like cross and all that, and like their riders wear kit. But then when they go out to coffee on site on Sunday or like a group ride to go bike packing together, it just becomes like chill. And so it's like really, so we're just really fortunate to have people who have like pushed the community of like just show up, it doesn't matter. And kind of with our local shop, Dirty River, what's happened is they do their Sunday ride. They take people on some of the like spots that like are the gray areas of riding, and then people meet each other on those and kind of spin off into their own groups, and it's been really cool to see. And so the people who put the effort into that, I'm always just like, you guys are the ones who make everything happen, and like so when I
Yeah.
get all the comments, I was like, no, I'm just a dude with a GoPro showing up to stuff that other people have done the real legwork to make happen. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's so cool that you have access to so much of that, though. Like that's just really cool. I feel like it's just starting here. Someone in the chat just said it's Canada, we don't have events. And like that kind of made me think of that. I'm like, you know what, they're almost not wrong. I mean, it's not true, but in a way, like that's what really kind of shook us about every time we go to Montreal. It's like, oh man, this place is just so much more like on par with like America and other cities that just people just do stuff. They're passionate,
Yeah.
and they coffee outside. Yeah, of course we got one. You know, like we do that, and
Yeah, it's buzzing.
yeah.
Someone had asked in the comments about commenting on the French Canadian cycling culture. They met up quite a few on the St. Lawrence Greenway Trail. I mean, cycling is definitely huge there. I'll say that. Like, we were really excited to see. One of the reasons we went to Quebec City last year was like Quebec City has a mountain bike tourism association, and they really have invested in a ton of infrastructure there. And I know that's obviously the French love cycling, and I think that's no different in Canada. Like that's definitely, they brought that passion over with them. So we're not French Canadians, so we might not be the absolute best people to comment on it, but the passion for cycling really seems to run deep in their blood in the French Canadian community for sure.
And that commenter too, Donald, he's in Cincinnati, which is 3.5 hours from here, so that's Ohio River. Very different architecture, very different vibe than Northeast Ohio. Like it's really surprising just that 3.5 hours how different it is. But he was in town last week for a micro distilling conference and hit me up, and we rode out to a brewery together. So
I saw that video. Yeah, we were just watching it last night.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's Donald.
Cool.
So yeah.
Really cool.
Man, I'm realizing
Tim Hortons is a goat.
You mentioned before you were like, oh, we've gone on, but
Yeah.
we don't want to keep you.
But also, someone said Letterkenny or Trailer Park Boys. That's like
That's an impossible
impossible question. Yeah. Actually, you know what?
There's a correct
Yes,
answer to
I
this.
think you and I just had a similar thought of.
Which is if you've seen Shoresy, which is a Letterkenny spin-off that came out. It's a hockey show.
Yeah.
But it's set in Northern Ontario where we're from. And even aside from that, even if you weren't in Northern Ontario, like cinematography is amazing. They use incredible music. It's really well shot, really well written. So
But
Shoresy.
Trailer Park Boys,
Yeah.
I still think has that slight. Like I love Trailer Park Boys. I can go on all day. So, huge fan. Tim Hortons is a goat. It's not. It's horrible.
Yeah. When Terry was doing his cross country thing, and since they went through Canada, and
By Niagara.
it became a running joke because every day someone's like, "When are you guys going through Detroit?" It's like, "We're not going through Detroit." I finally photoshopped them, like his POV camera, into the main street in Detroit, and like put it on the stream. But yeah, when they were going through, they just kept saying Timmy's, and it was like, "Oh, I got to go to Timmy's." And then their one guy got sciatica really bad, and he couldn't make it.
Oh no.
And then their running joke
Yeah, I
kept being
remember
like,
that.
"Now he works at Timmy's. He's just stuck there in
Yeah.
Canada." So.
That's good.
Timmy's is like, it's undisputably terrible coffee.
Yeah.
And even the donuts are not that good, but it is like it's the taste of home.
Yeah.
Like everybody who's an expat talks about missing it, even though they hated it when they lived here, kind of thing. It's the road trip classic.
What's the American equivalent? Is it Dunkin'?
Yeah, I guess. Would you say Duncan if it had to be the one? When I was in Toronto, when I was like way younger, me and a friend went just on a road trip, went to Toronto, and I remember we met a couple Toronto kids who are same age, and we were all drinking, and we were like going around. They were climbing on all these horse sculptures they had around there, and they thought everything was Canadian, and they kept saying, "Well, like Burger King." And we're like, "No, dude, that's an American thing." And they'd be like, "Well, Wendy's," and I'm like, "No, that's Wendy's." And then we're like, "There's some reason you guys are all about French fries, right? It's always the fries, and even if it's not poutine." And like, then we went into like a Taco Bell, and like they had all the Taco Bell dishes, but with fries instead of chips. I didn't know.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, instead of corn chips, because I don't know if you guys say, when you say chips, do you mean potato chips? Because the English.
Yeah, usually.
No,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
said yeah.
Yeah, but I imagine, honestly, like Taco Bell, like our taco culture, that's another thing that like America just, I mean, obviously,
So much better.
yeah, so much better. Like our tacos are just not great.
Yeah, I went to Austin last year and I was like, oh, this is what tacos are meant to taste like. Okay.
So
Okay.
much better. It's just not a thing. Like I think I don't know what our, maybe it's poutine, but like Americans just generally like, let's go grab tacos. That's the thing, as like, it's just not much of a thing here. Should be, because they're great.
I think, a huge reason is we just have such a huge, immigrant Mexican population, or just not even immigrant, just Mexican American population,
Yeah.
Hispanic.
Yeah, makes
population.
sense.
So,
Mhm.
well, it's funny
Yeah.
because I'm sure you know what's going on with the election, and all these close the border and like Southern people, those people all speak Spanish. They all hire people who speak Spanish.
Right.
They all like you work on a farm.
Yeah.
The farmer who might be the most stereotypical redneck dude speaks Spanish
Yeah,
because if
yeah.
not, he can't speak for the to the people who are working for him. So
Right.
it's this weird
It's
dualism of
so
America as well.
backwards.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Someone asked BC or Alberta, you'd have to ask that. You'd have to answer that.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to tour Canada numerous times. I'd say probably BC.
Yeah.
Yeah, BC is a lot better.
To get out there, I would love to. Yeah, I would love to see that. I remember when
Yeah.
was it Vancouver had the Olympics? Vancouver, right? The Winter Olympics.
Yeah, those. Yeah, like not. I mean, obviously long ago, but it wasn't super long ago. You
Yeah.
know, like
I just
Yeah.
remember that it was like too warm, and like
Yeah.
then they had them in that spot in Russia the next year. I'm like, hey, maybe we have the Winter Olympics somewhere cold next year.
Yeah.
Next 4 years.
yeah. And Calgary also had Winter Olympics.
That was way
But-
back. That was
and
'88.
Montreal.
That was the same year that
Yeah.
Seoul had them. Yeah, but
Yeah,
before they
yeah, and then
split
Montreal.
the winter and summer games into the two.
Ah.
Yeah, there was only an
Interesting. I
yeah,
didn't
there
know
was
that.
only an Olympic year. It was every 4 years for both, and then they
Oh.
switched them to be every 2 years basically. But
Yeah,
it's
they
still
said
every
that.
4
I
for
remember
summer,
the
every
Olympic
4
year.
for winter. But yeah, there just used to be
Yeah.
an Olympic year. So I think '88 was the last time it was in the winter and summer were in the same year, and it was Seoul and Calgary, if I remember correctly. Could be off.
Interesting.
Someone will correct me. They always do. But yeah.
Yeah.
But they definitely used to be all the same year. But Dunkin' tastes like grape nuts cereal soaked in sour milk. There's a Dunkin' 2 doors down from me, and my buddy owns a really good coffee shop, and I do their photography. So I'm usually drinking
Nice.
their coffee that I'm like brewing here at home, and like my girlfriend set me up with he gave me a grinder, and she set me up with a scale, and so I'm doing everything right as long as it
Yeah.
hasn't drifted too much. And then when it's out, I'm like, I walk over to Dunkin' and get an everything bagel and like a large black coffee, and I like
Oh
yeah.
man. Yeah.
Still technically caffeine.
Yeah.
but Not
Yeah.
the same.
You got to
Yeah.
get through the day,
Oh man.
Also,
They-
photography wise, I got to know: are you a Canon guy, Nikon,
Canon,
like
yeah.
Fuji, Canon?
Canon, but just because I always was from the DSLR days, and when my 5D4 was dying, and I was like, wow, I'm not going to buy another DSLR. Mirrorless is the way,
Right.
So I'm like, I was actually looking into the Sonys, and I was thinking I'd get a Sony, and then they announced their R and their mirrorless line, so I was able to stick with
Yep.
Canon, but only because I have the lenses and I'm invested in the system. All the cameras are so good now. Like
Yeah.
I mean, brand loyalty just doesn't matter. And then Nikon came back from the dead lately with these amazing cameras, which I thought they were. I'm like, they're going to go out of business. The most storied camera company of like the modern era can't like put out a good camera,
Yeah.
and then they just like have killed it lately. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You Fuji
Yeah.
people?
Yeah. Yeah.
People
I like Fuji a
the
lot. I mean,
Fuji people like just.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, steel bikes, all city, Fuji.
Yeah,
Kinda
that just
often
goes.
happens.
Yeah, that's my one thing.
But yeah.
I was always PC and Canon, and people are like, "What the fuck?" I did switch to Mac lately.
There you go.
But just because the M
Nice.
chips, I still prefer Windows. But the M chips are just too good. They're just
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's 4K footage. I mean,
just crushing it. And I bought like an M1 14-inch, and I'm plugging it into one USB-C, two 4K monitors, running all
Yeah.
kinds of just tons of
That's
footage.
what I'm on right now.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, it doesn't even break a sweat. I've
Yeah.
just never had an issue with it. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. I got into Fuji because of the vintage like film cameras. I got to say, like, that was probably the hardest thing. Like, as I tried more Sonys and stuff, but like having like that ISO dial, the shutter dial, everything just like an old like 70s Olympus or something. I just couldn't get over that. I'm like, oh, it's the best.
I love the aesthetic, and like I love film cameras, and I've shot film since one, I'm old enough that I shot it before digital existed in high school and stuff, and then for a number of years. But then I got back into it pretty early, like probably 2012 or something like that.
Oh, nice.
But like as a commercial photographer, the modern stuff with just like when I'm shooting events and it's like you're just trying to capture the moment, like
Yeah.
all the digital stuff, all the dials where they just need to be. I don't take my eye from the viewfinder. It's just a totally different way of thinking and shooting. So it's like I've got both. I total respect for both. Like I could totally see having one of the new rangefinder Fujis and like having that to slow down and take just cool pictures. Versus when I'm just like working and I'm in work mode 100%. So it's like
I totally get.
this guy gets this award. I can't miss this moment when they turn towards the camera. Like type thing.
Yeah.
Is where I love the
Yeah.
Canon. So.
That makes perfect sense. I remember the last time I tried a Sony, I was blown away at just like all that the AI assisted like subject tracking and stuff. I'm like, this is unbelievably accurate. I thought exactly what you said. Someone winning an award, like you can't miss that. It's your job.
Yeah.
And like, I totally get it. Fuji, you can miss it because that's the drawback of like their beautiful aesthetics, cool interface, but like they're a little behind.
Yeah. It's just a different. I think it's just a different. They're aiming for. I mean, they do have their XT Pros and stuff like that, which are more competing directly with the Canons and the Nikons and the Sonys.
Yeah.
Just two different.
GFX.
Yeah, style. Yeah, and then like their big medium formats, which nobody else could even compete with them on those. So, for landscape photography and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. Fun stuff.
Yeah, baking in the look of the Fujis too, I think is cool. Like the film simulations and not going home and like having to spend all the effort to the settings that Canon has like that are so trash. Like they look.
Are they?
Wow. They look like they're from like the first digital cameras ever made. I'm like, how?
Funny.
Who did they pass this off to? Like what?
Yeah.
It's unbelievably. I mean, it's hilarious. I've never even heard anyone talk about them in a review, and someone should be like, "Hey, look at the trash they threw in this camera." Like why?
Yeah.
Like why? Like anyway.
That's so funny. Yeah, the film sims are huge. Like they're really convenient. There's a lot of photos on our Instagram stuff that are straight out of the camera because it's just. I mean, I've dialed in like custom recipes I found online, and like they're so accurate. I've shot Portrait 400 on film through an old Olympus, and then this film sim, and I'm looking like that's almost identical. It's insane.
It's insane.
Yeah, they're really really good. But do you have a dream camera?
To be honest, I would get the new version of mine, the R5 Mark II. Like it's just I hybrid shoot. I do video work for a living too, and right now they put that out at $4,200, and that's a big pill to swallow. I'll do it eventually, but it'll probably be next year or the year after. Well, it'll be when my R5 just doesn't function. It'll be like the style no longer works, and I have to upgrade. So I don't upgrade for no reason because no clients have been mad about my image quality for a decade. So it's like we all sit there in the forums and argue about this stuff, but like that's what I was saying. All cameras are so good now. So I mean, I guess if you said dream camera, I would love to mess around with Leicas just to do it. But I would probably rather have a film one. I'd probably rather have an M6 than anything if I was going to drop that kind of cash. And it'd be about the lenses. It'd be about those Leica lenses that I'd want to spend the money on.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. I had a friend who had an M6, and I missed an opportunity to buy it off him. That, like, looking back, it was another one of those deals that got away from me that I just wasn't thinking. But just such beautiful cameras, and the MP too. I think he was selling it for the MP, and I remember thinking, like, why are you selling this thing? It's amazing. But then I saw his MP, and I'm like, oh my god, it's just like so sleek and like, oh, so gorgeous. Yeah, so I hear you there. Hasselblad medium formats look good, but expensive. Yep.
Yeah, there's Mamiya RZ67s around the studio from the guy I bought it off of, and there's even digital backs with them, and they still look really good. The one's a P25, so I don't know why I thought they were supposed to be megapixels, but it's actually 20. But it's still those lenses, those Mamiya lenses are just they look so good, and there's no color fringing, there's no chromatic aberration in them. They're really cool. They're slow to use, but they're fun. And then there's like 5 different film backs here. And so I've messed around with them a little bit, but since I've started to like mess around with those during the pandemic and a little after, I just got more busy. And then the bike side of YouTube stuff has taken off as my creative outlet. So, I've messed with them less and less. And it's funny because I have a cabinet sitting full of like RZ67 stuff. So.
Oh man, yeah. Remember I had that RB for a while? That thing was like carrying around like a train. Yeah, it was awesome.
Flips up that giant mirror. Yeah. Because those
Yeah.
are
Oh,
SLRs.
yeah.
Yeah.
Killing
yeah.
my neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and the old the slide out the back. Like there's like the first week of having, I always was like trying to take a shot. Like, what did I do wrong? What door is open? What
Yeah.
thing did I not pull? Like,
Yeah, they definitely
Yeah.
automated the RZs a little more than the RBs were, to the point that they could take the digital back and everything. But there's still a number of things you better keep in mind when you're messing with one of those. It's not yet.
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Panasonics, people lean towards, it seems like video shooters lean towards the Panasonics more than still shooters, is what I've found. They just have more of the features in there. So, yeah, camera. I could probably talk about cameras like you talk about guitars. I would bet. Like, it's
Oh yeah.
yeah. Like upstairs is I have a. I have two storefronts in the studio, and the one like was always covered up. I finally took it down and like put all my camera collection in there. So, but I have, I don't know. I can't count hundreds of. I have at least 100 film cameras. I love them. I used to just go.
Oh, man.
And I wouldn't go to eBay or anything. It was like I had to get them at flea markets or thrift stores. But I started early enough before everything shot up. So I even have like, I think I have 5 Polaroid XX70s, like all the folding ones and all the stuff that like then was going for $200-300 later, and yeah, all the 600s. They're all sitting under my couch because I don't have anywhere to put them. But yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fun. I mean, I only had like 3 or 4 film cameras, but I dropped my favorite one in Lake Superior.
Really?
Last summer. Yeah, and then like all the oils and stuff immediately seized up, so like I couldn't even rewind the film. I did get like the film out and got it developed, and it actually was pretty cool. There was some pretty
interesting, yeah.
happy accidents in there, the way that it kind of threw some random greens in, but I still have yet to get it fixed. The
Which
lens
one
is
was
still
it?
good. It was an OM1.
Oh,
but it was
nice.
one of the oldest. Like, it was a really clean one, and it was one of the black ones too, which you don't see very often.
Wow.
But it was just so clean. I remember when I found it, I was like, wow, this feels almost like new old stock. And I just really liked it. It's just such a simple camera, and the lens was really good. So the lens I still use, and I have an adapter to use it on my Fuji. And it's really nice, just a lot of character to it. I think like early 70s, but I have to find someone to fix it. Because it's broken.
Yeah.
Lake Superior got the best of it.
Yeah, I was always a Minolta guy, so I have tons of Minoltas.
Oh, nice.
Which is kind of cool because their legacy became Sony. So Sony bought the Minolta camera division, and that's why Sony all of a sudden became a really good camera company. So it's all the Minolta tech. So
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. I didn't know that.
yeah, because those original Alphas, when Sony first started getting into digital, Alpha is the Minolta mount that was autofocus. So it was Minolta Alpha. So yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
Problem with medium format is focusing speed. Can't use them for sports action. Yeah, and the same thing, you just don't really need to. You don't need that much resolution. And plus the lenses it would take to get that long reach you would want would be giant. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sony SLTs. Sony had those cameras that they had a mirror that didn't flip up. They were translucent. So you could look through the viewfinder, but the picture was taken through the mirror because of the angle of the mirror. It was this really interesting tech that came out of Minolta and went into Sony's. But yeah.
Crazy. Huh. Got a bunch of camera heads in the chat.
Yeah. This channel started as a, first thing we did was beer reviews, but then it was a mix between cameras and bikes. And then
Interesting.
when the pandemic hit, before the pandemic hit, just in the beginning of 2020, I decided to make a video every week no matter what. And it was so I could get better at editing. Because I'm like, I'm good in Photoshop, I suck in Premiere. I need like a goal to get better. And then so I was making both. Like I'd go for a bike ride, shoot film, talk about the film stocks. Even some of my first live streams, I'm developing Tri-X and stuff like that. And then
cool.
pretty soon, like only the bike people were chatting. So I was like, now I'm trying to work camera stuff into this bike channel. And then I was like, hey, this is a bike.
Yeah.
You know? And bike videos
so I mean,
bike videos are easier
Yeah.
than camera videos too. So
that's kind of how our channel started too, in a way. Like I just taught myself how to edit like last year, I think. Or maybe, well, actually, our first few videos was about 2 years ago, but we took a whole year of not doing it. We made like 4 videos and took a whole year not doing it. But same thing, I was just like, I want to learn to edit videos, and I kind of I'm still figuring it out, to be honest. But it was kind of the reason why I filmed bike rides, because I'm like, that's kind of fun. We're out every day,
Yeah.
or most days, I should say.
Capture it.
Might as well capture it, and then it's just like, oh my god, people are subscribing to this. Like, what's happening?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened here. It was like a personal project that I knew if I didn't put it out in the world, I wouldn't stay motivated. So it just it
Yeah.
takes on a life of its own sometimes, you know.
Totally. Yeah. Do you play Pantera through that basement, and do you switch to solid state like Dime did? Uh, I do love playing Pantera stuff, and I do it through a tube amp, not the basement. It's just a little bit too vintage, bluesy, smoky sounding. But this other amp is a Buddha. Buddha was bought by PV amps. So this is before they were bought by PV, and they were handmade, and it just has an amazing gain channel. It's called the Super Drive 30. So I do a lot of like heavy stuff on that.
My buddy
Does it go
Josh had a
11?
yeah. Does it go to 11? My buddy Josh had, I believe it was a Mesa Boogie that had a switch that would go from solid state to tube. It did both.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
yeah. It was.
Oh,
cool.
was that oh, I think I know which one it is. Like dual or triple rectifier, maybe? Something
Yeah, it
like
was the
that.
color.
I
It
forget.
was the color of the fender behind you, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Nice. I met Dimebag.
Oh, don't get Brendan started on that. That when Brendan and I first met when we were 16, he was very fixated on getting a dime bag tattoo, which luckily never happened.
Luckily, yeah, I didn't even know what it meant. Luckily, my mom was like, no. Oh my God. Yeah, wasn't he
Oh, shot.
killed? Yeah, and I was
Okay.
just thinking, actually, wasn't it kind of close to Ohio? I actually have no idea now that I'm thinking about it, but yeah, he was rushed on stage and shot, and it was the same day as John Lennon was shot. Pretty
Oh,
sure. It's a
yes.
pretty crazy story.
Yes.
I think I can't at all remember. Alex in the chat maybe could chime in, but I think it was maybe even close to Ohio where he was playing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
That's
been a
crazy,
while.
yeah.
That's been a while, but yeah, I remember. I do think it was. Yeah.
Yeah,
for some
we
reason
actually this.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say this summer we saw the Pantera celebration tour that's kind of been happening the last year, where the two surviving members, the singer and bass player, are out with Zach Wilde, who kind of famously known for playing with Ozzy Osbourne and all that stuff. Yeah, it was Columbus, Ohio, where he was shot.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow,
okay. Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
And yeah. So it was my first time seeing what's left of Pantera and hearing those songs live, and I thought I was gonna like just melt, and I was like trying to slow my heart rate down. I was so excited to just hear that stuff live. Yeah, Columbus, Ohio. Wow, that's crazy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Ohio's the site of a lot of terrible happenings. That Who concert where a bunch of fans got crushed to death was only
Really?
about 40 minutes from here. So
Whoa, crazy.
that place doesn't exist anymore. That arena, but
Wow. Well, that's really cool, Alex, that you saw Dime. That's unbelievable.
Hair metal.
Am I into hair metal? Oh yeah.
yeah, it's funny because that's what I would have grown up with, but I'm not into it. It's like
Yeah.
you know, those songs come on the radio. I don't dislike them, but they're not records I like still own. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh
definitely-
yeah. I still listen to, like, I don't know. I mean, like, I love Judas Priest. Actually, Sebastian Bach from Skid Row is playing here in like 2 weeks, and I'm probably not gonna be able to, fight the urge to go. So I'm gonna go. But yeah, I love a lot of hair metal.
Now it's 11:30. We should probably wrap it up, but
Yeah, that's very. I was just thinking my dog probably has to go for a pee.
Yeah.
So.
well, I'm starting to think that I have to do the same.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
No, this is great. I'm glad we got to do it finally. We tried to coordinate for a number of weeks, and
Yeah.
Usually I don't. Yeah, Tuesday night is not a night I usually have to work, but it's been crazy. Event photography
Yeah.
here for me, so which is good, but
That's great.
as a freelancer, so and no
Yeah.
and no social safety nets. So
Yep. No, I
Yeah,
feel
thank
ya.
you so much for having us. We really appreciate the chance to come and talk about all
Yeah.
this, nerd out a bunch of stuff, not only bikes.
is our first ever live, and yeah, it was an absolute blast. And
Awesome.
honestly, thanks so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's super fun.
Yeah, we always talk about this, how the first hour is going to be like heavily bikes, but then after a certain period, it's like all bets are off. So
Yeah.
But I think everyone appreciates that too, and you can see it from the chat. So yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad you guys
Sweet.
had a good time. I definitely did too. So
Yeah, you got a great audience too. Everybody's
thanks
really
so much to
got a
everybody
lot of
for
funny
hanging out and
people,
making us
and
laugh in the comments.
yeah,
yeah, this is the big COVID project that it was like, man, we got to hang out somehow. And
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I was writing down notes,
Yeah.
and it was mostly camera talk. It was like, I bought the R5,
funny.
and I'm like, here's my R5, like all nervous, you know.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Amazing.
It's-
Well, I'll see you on the
Yeah.
on other aspects of the internet, and so
yeah,
Yeah.
and probably see everyone in the chat next Tuesday too.
awesome.
All right.
All right,
Have a great night.
Night, everyone.